So I have a really cool full stack tutorial where I'm going to walk you through how I built out this entire meme generator application using Next.js. We're using Drizzle. We have a Postgres database, and we are going to be using a service called ImageKit, which by the way is a sponsor of this video, which you can use to store all your digital assets in your videos and leverage a bunch of their built-in transformations for images inside of this meme generator. So let me walk you through the app and kind of demo it, and then we'll talk more about the tech that we're going to use. So here is the app. We have the ability for users to come in and search for memes. And this is all using ImageKit's powerful search engine behind the scenes. So let's first start by uploading a base image meme. For the first input, we can just give a display name such as distracted boyfriend. And then the second input is for adding a comma delimited list of tags, which is all built directly into ImageKit. So like when you upload an image, you can actually manually add tags or use AI to auto tag images. But in our case, let's just add something that kind of describes the image. So I'll say like looking back, and then we could do a comma, and I can just go ahead and say like guy with girlfriend, just in case someone searches these keywords and like you want this to show up, right? So let's just select the distracted boyfriend meme now, and we'll click on this one, and this will upload the image to ImageKit's media library, which you can see over here now. The image is in their asset manager, which is a really seamless integration to get like these files uploaded. And now that we have a meme, we can basically start doing some overlays here. For example, we could just go ahead and say like PHP, and then we're going to go ahead and just like position this over the girl in red. All right. And then we're going to add another overlay over here, and we'll say TypeScript. I'll put that over the girl in blue. So all of this that you're seeing here for applying like the background and the text and the positioning, this is all using ImageKit's powerful SDK to basically transform the image and do things on top of it. For example, I can even like blur out the image more if I wanted to. I can sharpen out the image. I can grayscale the image, which is actually really easy to do. Basically, you just have a URL of your assets and you can apply transformations to those images directly. Super, super easy. So some other things that are in this application is I can go ahead and download this meme. So now I have this image and I can upload it to whatever social media platform that I want. Some additional things that this tutorial are going to cover is we have Auth.js set up. So I can log in with Google. I'll go ahead and just select my email. And now I have the ability to favorite a meme. So if you have a bunch of memes that you enjoy using, you can just go ahead and favorite them. And then if you go back to your favorites list, those will show up over here. Okay, so I have these two memes. Maybe they're my favorite memes. And of course, I can just go ahead and unfavorite them, and that'll remove it from the list. I can come back and just start making memes using those templates that I enjoy. And then the demo, the filtering, we can just go ahead and type in like SpongeBob or Sponge, and that'll give us all the memes that start with that. I could do like a D and just get back all the distracted and Drake. We also keep a count of all of the users who have favorited something, so we can kind of like figure out what memes are the coolest to use. We got the ability to sign in and sign out, and then also we got light mode and we got some dark mode. Okay, so this is what we're going to be building in this tutorial. I definitely recommend you stick around. A lot of cool stuff that we're going to be doing. And I would say ImageKit's definitely a cool service that you should try to learn about. So not only can you use their media library for uploading all your assets, ImageKit allows your images and videos to be stored on your own cloud provider of choice. For example, I would probably store a lot of my stuff on S3 buckets, and ImageKit basically just sits in front of that as like a proxy and can still apply all those transformations to wherever you're storing your assets, which is pretty nice because a lot of projects already have a bunch of assets already stored in like S3 and various places, and it's nice not to have to just migrate everything over to be able to use these features. So yeah, I hope you guys are interested in sticking around. Let's just go ahead and dive into it, and I'll walk you through how I built out this whole application from scratch, starting now. Let's first start by making a repository for all the code that we're going to be doing. Go over here and say meme generator, and let's make this public and MIT over here. And I'm gonna go ahead and just clone down this project. So if you have your SSH key set up with GitHub, you can just go ahead and clone. I'll say git clone, and I'll type in that URL. And then I'm gonna go ahead and just open up that directory. So we will be using Next.js in this project with app router. So I'm gonna go ahead and say npx create next app at latest, and I'll do it in this directory. And then I'm gonna use the defaults for most of this. So I'll say yes to proceed. And then I'll say yes, TypeScript, ESLint, Tailwind, source directory, app router, and then we should be good. And now that the project is set up, let's just go ahead and run it and make sure that we can access our running Next app. So let's go ahead and command click this. It'll take us over to our Next app, and everything is running well. So since we're building out like a meme generator, it'd be nice to start off with a meme. So I have this meme right here. Now, when you're using Next.js, you could potentially put your meme files here in the public directory, but that's not very dynamic. Like, you can't have users just upload their own base images and other people could use them. So I think it would make more sense to dive into using ImageKit, which is where we're going to be storing a lot of our images and assets. So I'm on the ImageKit dashboard, and I'm going to be using the built-in ImageKit media library. So it's basically a place you can store all your assets and your GIFs and your MP4s and MP3s, etc. But I want to point out that there is a ability to attach your own origin. And what an origin is like your own S3 bucket. We can actually go here and just check out what some of the origin types there are. S3, which is what I would personally use if I wasn't using the built-in media library for ImageKit. But of course, there's also Google Cloud Storage, there's Azure Storage. So all the main cloud compute platforms are here. They got some other stuff too, such as DigitalOcean Spaces. That's pretty cool, which is nice because you can use all of the built-in ImageKit functionality and not have to basically move all your assets over. Let's say you have a giant app with a bunch of assets, you can keep them in your S3 bucket, but still use ImageKit for your kind of like your proxy, right? So let's just go here and upload our first meme image. And there are some default images here, which I'm not gonna use. I'm gonna go ahead and click on this new button, and I'm gonna go ahead and just upload a file. I'm gonna do it from my device, all right? And then on my desktop, there should be that meme that we talked about. So let's go to the desktop, let's grab that balloons meme, and here we have it. So I'm gonna go ahead and just upload that, and we should be done. So the ImageKit media library allows us to basically upload assets, and then in our next app, we're going to try to display this. Okay, so let's just go ahead and look at this image. And now we have the ability to basically, edit this image if we want to. We could download it directly. We could add comments over this image. But in order to display this, we're going to want to grab the URL for the image itself. So up here at the top, you can click on copy URL. And then we're going to go over to our main page. I did go ahead and clear out all the placeholder Next.js stuff. Let's add in an image element, and then we're going to say source is equal to, and then I'll just go ahead and put the full URL to that image. And so now I can go back to our app, and the image shows up like this. But there's also some really cool things we can do, such as image transformations on the image that we're displaying. So like, for example, if you go over to image transformations and scroll down, you'll see that you can actually put a transformation string in between your URL endpoint and the image path. Let's just copy this, and then going back to the code, we can just put that right here. And so that is going to actually apply a transformation on the ImageKit side of things to scale the image down before it's sent back to you. So now if I go back to the app, you'll notice that we get back the image. And just to kind of show you this is happening on ImageKit side of things, you go and just filter for images and just refresh. You'll see that we get back a 300 by 300 image, which is down here at the bottom. And that will reduce the bandwidth, making people who are on phones or 5G network load faster. Now, since we are building a meme generator, there's some other transformations that are built into ImageKit we should probably try using. So one of them is adding overlays. So for example, if you scroll through here, they'll tell you how you can add a image overlay. For example, if I had a logo or a watermark I wanted to put on this thing, I could add it directly from using this URL type of structure. But what we are kind of interested in doing is adding text because we're making a meme generator, right? So scrolling down, we have an add text over image. And the way you can do that is you basically add in an L text, an I, and then your text name, such as hello, and then an LN. So if I copy this and we go back over here, I could just go ahead and paste this in. So put a comma and just paste this in. And now if you look at the image, you'll see that coming back from ImageKit, it put text on the image itself. Okay, this isn't happening client side, this is all happening on the server. So this text is a little bit small, but luckily we can actually just search for font size here, and there is a way to increase the font size. And actually, if you just want to scroll down, there's a big list of parameters you can actually use on the text itself. Like you could add some background color if you want to, but we want the font size. So let's just do an FS. And we can just go back to where we're doing the transformations. And inside of this L text LN, you want to add whatever additional transformations you want. So I'm going to say FS 32 and save that. Going back, and now the text is black and big and it says hello. And now the text is much larger and it says hello. Let's try also changing the color. So like if you wanted to change the color of the text, you can do a CO. And so let's just go ahead and follow that same pattern. So CO red, and then we will go back to the image and notice that now it's red. So there's a lot of stuff you can do to the text, including like positioning. You can do relative, like something that's really cool is you can actually do like instead of a 32 for the font size, you can do a BW multiplier by like a numeric. And that's actually going to take the size of your image and scale the text based on the image size. Some other transformations that are really cool to point out is you can change like the font family. So you see here they're doing like a custom font here instead of the default. You can also add background colors. So if you want to add more contrast to an image, that's possible as well. So as you can tell, dealing with this URL is probably not the most maintainable approach. So I think using a SDK could make this a little bit more manageable. So scrolling through their setup guide, this is just a Next.js application. So we've already done that part, but let's just scroll through. Let's get to the good part. So installing the ImageKit Next library. So let's just go ahead and copy this command. And in my terminal down here, I'll make a new and I'll say paste that in. That'll install ImageKit IO next. And then we can follow through with a little bit more setup. So we need to set up these environment variables. I've already set up one of them, but we can probably refactor the way we're doing it a little bit. Let's go here and we're going to paste in this. So the next public URL endpoint, I'm guessing it needs to be this, and probably with that trailing slash that I removed earlier. Let's just add that back in. And then we need an ImageKit public key. So let's go down here to developer and let's click developer options. And then you'll see there's a public key that shows up over here. Let's copy that and paste that in right here. And in fact, I noticed that there was no trailing slash. Let's get rid of that trailing slash. And you can see that right here in the developer options, the URL endpoint does not have a trailing slash. So let's use that. And then we also need a private key. So let's go back and let's click on this private key so we can copy it. And by the way, I deleted my IP from this list so you guys can see it, but I'm going to go ahead and click on set password here. And then I'm going to go ahead and set a password and save this. All right, so let's go back to the developer options again. Let's click on this view and I'll type in that password. And now I have access to see that private key. So let's just go ahead and paste that in here. Okay, so now our environment variable should be set up for this SDK that we just installed. And then we're going to follow the guide a little bit more. So let's start with something simple just to make sure this is all set up correctly. Let's look at this IK image. This looks like how you probably display an ImageKit image, right? And we're going to go and see how it is done. So scrolling down here, let's just go ahead and import this ImageKit image inside of this file. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and just grab this. And in place of this image that we did previously, let's just put this ImageKit component. And for URL endpoint, we're going to put that environment variable for now. Okay. And then here for path, we could just go ahead and put balloon.jpg. And again, we can start applying transformations to this. So I believe the width and height would be like these transformations. So if I wanted to make the width 300 and the height, I don't know, 500. And then before I save this, let's just actually go to the top of this page and just say use client, because I do believe the ImageKit components are client components. So we have to make sure. And then we're getting an error missing URL endpoint during initialization. That's because I did use the tutorial named environment variables. Let's just go ahead and use that one instead. Get rid of that. And now hopefully this will display the meme. Okay, awesome. So now this is a easier maintainable way to use the same thing behind the hood. So if we were to inspect the element and just look at this URL, you will see that inside the URL itself, we have those transformations that we did manually. So it's great that they provide a Next.js library that can kind of help us out. Again, let's go back to adding overlays and let's make sure we understand how to add in those text overlays. So here is an example. Basically, you add a transformation property. Let's do this. And I think technically you could also just do the width and height on this if you want. So we could just follow how they're doing it there and get rid of the width and height. TypeScript is saying those have to be strings. And then in the text itself, we could just go ahead and add in hello world again. And the font size will be 50. Let's check out our app and make sure that it says hello world. Awesome. Hopefully that all makes sense and why we kind of brought in the SDK just to make our life a little bit easier. Now I went ahead and moved the width and height from the transformations back to the main IK image component, just because that's how it's being done in the documentation. So I want to try to follow the docs. And then another thing we should probably do is inside the next config, you want to allow your app to be able to access the ImageKit URLs, right? So typically in the next config, you have to add some remote patterns here just to give your app access to external domains. So let's move on to uploading files. That's going to be a really important feature when it comes to a meme generator application. So going to upload file section, we can use an IK upload component, which is going to render out a file type that can be used to upload directly to the ImageKit library. So we are going to go and follow the setup guide a little bit. So the first thing we need to do is make an API auth route.ts file. So I'll go here, I'll say app API auth route.ts. And then I'll paste in some code. And this is basically taking the private key that we stored in our .env, and it's going to create a response that has a token, an expiration time, and a signature. So we're probably going to use this to allow the user to upload directly to ImageKit. And to verify this works, what you could do is go to /API/auth, make sure you get back this information. And we did, which is good. Let's go back to the main page, and then we are going to follow this guide a little bit. So the way it works is you have to make an authenticator function using our public key. So let's just grab this code, and let's go back to the main page here, and I'm going to paste this in like that. Let me zoom out a little bit. And now that we have that, what we could do is scroll down a little bit, and we're going to wrap our code inside this ImageKit provider. So let's just grab this, and then we're going to go back to down here, paste that in. We definitely want to put this over here, and technically we can move this to like a providers file or like a layout. But let's keep it simple for now. And then also we need the URL endpoint here. So let's just go ahead and grab this. I'll say const URL endpoint is equal to that. So now that we have the ImageKit provider wrapping our IK image component, we don't need to pass in this URL endpoint anymore to these components. So we can just go ahead and remove that, and it should still work the way it did before. But I do want to talk a little bit about what the authenticator function does that we added in. Basically, this is going to talk to our local API and get a signature and a token and an expiration date so that later on, when the upload component tries to upload to ImageKit, ImageKit can verify that, hey, this person does have permission to upload the file. So let's go back to the docs, and we are going to grab this IK upload component, and we're going to put it down here below IK image. Just go ahead and auto import this. And we want to put a callback here for when this thing is successful or fails. So I'm going to go ahead and just say this could be an error. And we can say console log error. And then this has a response object that comes back. So let's just go ahead and try this out. And we will see that it's going to upload to our ImageKit media asset library when we do this. So let's just go ahead and select a file. I'm going to go and find the 2 buttons meme that I should have on my desktop. And once we've selected that, it's going to automatically upload to our ImageKit media library. So let's go over here and just do a refresh. And you'll see that now we have the 2 buttons meme pop up here that we can actually go and view. And then additionally, let's look at the console because it was going to print out that response object so we can kind of understand. So coming back from ImageKit, you'll get the name of your upload. You'll get a file type, a file path, which we need to keep in mind. This is what we're going to use in a bit to basically display the image we just uploaded, and also the file ID. So this is just good information that comes back to know what asset was just uploaded to ImageKit. Now I will say you can customize this the way you want. So if you go back to the guide and scroll down, you'll see that there's a bunch of different properties you can pass to the IK upload component. And they also have documentation explaining how you can pass a custom ref and then basically invoke that ref from another button if you want to start off the upload. But one thing I think will be really nice to add in is, can we just have the image we just selected display on the page after we've uploaded it, right? So we can just use this response object that came back and use the file path, which is what you should use for kind of telling the IK image component how to display the image. So let's go back to the code, and we're going to first add a state variable. So I'm going to say const file path and set file path. And then we want to go ahead and scroll down. And when we get that response object back, we can set the file path and set it equal to the response.file path. And then in our IK image component, instead of just hard coding balloon JPEG, we'll say file path. We go back to the app, notice that it's not going to work because it's trying to show a component with like an empty file path. So we should probably make this conditional. So only if the file path is truthy, then we'll display it. Okay, so now let's click on this and we'll go to the 2 buttons again. So click on this one, click upload, and then you'll see that that image pops up for us. So that's how you can kind of get the image and display it after you have uploaded it. Before we make too much progress, I think I'm going to bring in a better component library so our app can look a little bit nice as we're building it. And the one I like to use in a lot of my videos is ShadCN. So let's go to the ShadCN docs and let's go to the installation guide. It's really easy to get set up in Next.js. Basically, you just run this command. And if I go over to my app, open up a new terminal and run this. Go ahead and pick the default styles, the default color, and they'll say yes. Now, the next thing I typically do is I'll add a single component. So like adding the button component, probably the easiest thing you can do to verify this is working. So if this is installed correctly, what you can do is go to your main page and let's just go ahead and just add a button. So let's just import this like here. And I'll just say click me, and let's go back to our UI and verify this button shows up. I have to refresh my page right now. Cool, so we have the click me button, and here we have it. Here's the button. Let's just verify we can change like a variant. So on ShadCN buttons, you can change variants. So like, let's do destructive and see if this turns red. So now that ShadCN is set up, I think we should add a header and maybe add a link so that you can browse base meme images. So I do plan to go back to the digital asset management media library. And for some of these images, I'm going to go ahead and put tags on them. And we could basically use the ImageKit API to query for different memes based on keywords. So one thing I like about ShadCN is that you can go to this blocks tab and you can kind of scroll through and browse a bunch of existing ways that you can just bring in components directly into your app. So if we want a header, I would just scroll down, and this looks like a good header that we could start with. So switch this to code and then just type dashboard. And it looks like there's a header right here. So what we could do is just grab this entire header and we can use it in our own project. Let's grab this and then let's go back to our app. And I'm going to go ahead and just make a new file here called header.tsx. And then we'll say export function header like this, and just go ahead and return all that code that I just copied. Now we're going to have to auto import some stuff. So let's just do that real quick. Now there will also be some things that we'll need to actually like install. So like sheet, that's another component that we haven't installed yet. So to do that, just go back to this command and just type in sheet, and that should install the component. Okay, it added sheet over here to the components UI, and then we could simply just import it again. Make sure we import it from the right location. Import the button. We've got a menu icon. We got a sheet content. Now let's also add the input. So let's just do an input add. And then we can also add a drop-down hyphen menu. Okay, so now we can import the drop-down menu and all the different components we need for it. Now, when you import ShadCN components, make sure you import with the @components. Sometimes this Radix UI component will show up with the same name. I would highly recommend to like pay attention to what you're doing so you import the correct component. Now, if you wanted to save some time, you could probably just go to the code that was over here and just like grab all these imports instead of manually do them. But we're almost done anyway, so let's just do it. And then the input here. Okay, so we have no errors in this component. And now that we have a header component, we could probably go to our layout. Let's just go to layout over here. And then in the body, let's just go ahead and put the header at the very top inside of this body. And if we go back to our app, we see that we have a header pop up. Okay, let me go ahead and just move my head over here. And notice it's already responsive, right? This is already responsive when you get to a certain size. Like we have navigation that's already set up. I don't really like the transparent background, to be honest with that, but that could be something that we address at some point. We also have a drop down already for like the account. So like you got a nice looking header in like less than a couple of minutes. Okay. So let's simplify this a little bit. We don't need all these links. Really, we just want maybe browse. So let's go back to the header. And we can just go ahead and just remove like everything except for like a browse. So all these links can go away. And then we also have like a mobile view. So we need to make sure that the mobile view only has one thing. Okay, so we got dashboard. And then in the mobile menu, we just want dashboard for right now. So let's just go ahead and delete that too. Let's delete all this stuff. Now I don't like how the background is transparent because you can't even like read the links. Let's go over to the sheet content and we'll just say BG array of, we'll make it like 950. So now it's a little bit easier to actually read this. Now from a use case perspective, I think it makes sense to just keep a search bar in the header, because if I'm trying to make a meme, I should just be able to search like all the existing memes that I'd want. And then that'll take me to a page that shows the list. So instead of saying search products, let's say search memes. Okay. And then what we're going to do is when a user types something in here, we can press enter and redirect them to like a browse page with a query string. And then that is going to look over our media library assets and look for things that have similar names or tags. So let's go to the existing form that's in the header. And we're just going to add in a server action. So in Next.js, you can simply just say action, and you're going to let that be an async anonymous callback function. And actually, Cursor's doing pretty good here. So let's just let that happen. So basically, you add a use server directive in the top of your function call. And then we're going to get the search from the name over here. So notice that this input has name of search. We're going to grab that from the form data when this entire form were to submit. And then we just redirect the user to a search URL with a query string. So let's save this, make sure this works. I'm going to go ahead and type in like balloons, click enter, and notice that we do get redirected to a search page. Now, we haven't implemented this route yet, so that's what we need to do. So let's go, and before I do that though, let's commit. I'm going to go ahead and just add everything and say adding a header with search bar. All right, so now we need to add a search page. So how do we do that? Well, let's go back to our app. And hopefully in Next.js, you understand that this is a file-based router. So you just need to add a folder called search. And then we can, inside of that folder, say page.tsx, where we can say export default search page and just return something like this. All right, so now we see search page pop up. Pretty cool. But what we want to do is when we are running this, we need to query ImageKit using the query string that was passed in. So inside of here, we typically get like a props like this. And so we can get the search parameters, and we are passing one called Q. Just as a reminder, this is what we're passing in this query string, and it's going to have a value. So in our case, balloons. So using the search params, what I want to do is I'm actually going to go and bring in a Node SDK for ImageKit. So let's just grab this library and I will install that. And we're going to go and try to understand how to get this going. So basically we could do something like this, put this at the top of our page just for now. We could also probably install the TypeScript types. So if you see a TS up here, that means there's types. So we're going to go, so going to the terminal, we'll do the same thing. We'll just say types in front of that so we can install those. So now we just need to provide some things here. So for example, we could just replace all that with some of the values that we currently have in our .env. So we have like the private key, which would be this one, the public key, we could just use the next public key, and then we could also use the URL endpoint. So let's do this one. And now that we have the ImageKit SDK ready to use, we could simply go down here and we want to get back all the files. So if you look at the docs, there's a way to list. Let's go to list and search files. So basically we just want to use something kind of like this. So let's go ImageKit.list files. And then we can pass in some options here. So for example, search query, that was one that we just learned about. And this is going to be a string. So we simply just need to say name colon, and then I think we need to pass in that Q. Yeah, so this is going to return a promise. Just hover over it and it says promise here. So we definitely want to await on it. I'm going to do this. We can await on it. And just in case, if this is using fetch under the hood, I'm going to go ahead and just bring in the unstable no store so that I can tell Next.js that like don't cache stuff. All right, so now we have the files, hopefully, and what we could do is let's just try to render those out. So I'm going to say files.map file, and then we're going to return, just for right now, return some divs. But we should also add probably a unique key to this, so file ID. So when we go to this page, it should hopefully fetch at least whatever we searched in and display a list of things somewhere. So let's go to our app and notice that it comes back with balloons. So now if I change this to a B, pretty cool, comes back with both. So now we want to actually display the images. Okay, well, we know how to do that. We've already done that before. We just bring in the ImageKit image component like this. And we probably just need to give it some things. So first of all, we definitely need to give it a key. In fact, I'm just going to let cursor do that work for us. Now, I think this will work fine if we were to put a use client. Now, this won't work just yet because I believe this needs to be in a use client component. So what I would like to do is break up your page into smaller components. And this is a good scenario where like, okay, maybe we should make a results list component, and we could say use client here. Then I can say export function results list, which will take in some files, which this is not the file we want to use. We actually can hover over what comes back over here. And it looks like we get some file objects. So from the types that we installed, I think we probably want to get a file object here. And then we should have all the files that are passed in. And then we could just go ahead and grab this code from the page. We're going to move it into the results list here. So just go ahead and do that. Import the ImageKit component. All the TypeScript is happy there, and we'll go back to our main page, and we'll just say results list. Okay. Now we are getting a little runtime error saying missing URL endpoint during initialization. So let's just double check. Maybe we need to actually say URL endpoint here and put that in. And now I would double check. I think it's because we used to use a provider before on the other page. And now we're not using that provider on the other page. So we should probably move that provider to a higher level, which I think I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new file here called providers.tsx. And we'll say use client in here. We'll say export function providers. Okay. And then we're going to go back to here and we want to cut this code out. Okay. We're going to cut that out and we're going to put this to wrap all the children on all of our pages. Because I'm assuming a lot of our pages in our app are going to need this ImageKit provider. So let's go ahead and find where we did the authenticator and the public key. URL endpoint, maybe we can grab out too. But let's just grab all this, put it in here, okay, and delete anything that we're not using. So I can delete this. That can be deleted. All right. So we're going to go ahead and just delete the provider stuff from this completely. And because we're going to put it in the layout. So let's just go ahead and delete all this stuff. And then we're going to go back to the layout. And we want to make sure that all the children, probably even the header too, in the body, we could just put it right here, I guess. We could just say providers, import that, and then wrap our header and our children with that. In case we wanted to display a logo image as well, it makes sense to wrap the header. Another thing we could do is we could go ahead and just export this URL endpoint from this providers function. And then we could import it. So like right here, you see that we kind of like hard code this URL endpoint. We could just instead import it where we need it. And same thing with the other page. So we have the results list page. This could just be imported. And I think we're missing one thing. So let's try to figure out what we're missing here. I'm going to go ahead and just console log out the file and try to understand what we are missing on that file itself. So let's go to the console. All right, here is the data structure. So we have file path. I think instead of saying source, what we could do is just put path. And then we could just say file path. And there you go. Refresh the page, make sure it seems like it's working. And now we could style this. So instead of just displaying like memes in a giant list, it might make sense to display them in cards. So in ShadCN, we can actually go back to the components over here, and they do have a card component if you want to use that. So that every meme, you could basically have a button at the bottom that says like customize or something. So we're going to go and just install this real quick. Let's just run this command. I'll do it in a new terminal. We'll clear this out. All right. And then inside of the page, let's import all this card stuff. The result list, okay, that's fine. And then we're gonna grab this card. So if you wanted to, you can make another component called like a image card or a meme card. It's okay to just put it in line here, I think, for now. We're gonna go ahead and just do this. And inside of here, we're gonna grab this, put it inside the card content. And then we're going to go ahead and just like fix the indentation a little bit. And it's missing a key, so we should probably add in the key there. Okay, so let's check this out. Let's go back to our app and make sure that we have some cards popping up, and we do. Now, I think there's a little issue with the styling in our app. I think maybe ShadCN didn't fully set up correctly, but right now, let's just go ahead and put these in columns. So like maybe we could do 3 columns for all these memes. And the way you can do that in Tailwind is in the parent wrapping container, you literally can just give it a class name of grid calls 3, and then you can give it like a gap. So I'll say gap of 4 or gap of 8. And now all of our memes will be displayed in cards. And we could also probably on this page itself, we could probably add like an H1 called like search results. Okay. And then we'll just make this like a text 4XL. So text 4XL, font bold. Okay. There you go. And then also we could probably give this whole thing a container and an MX auto. So that'll be contained on the page. And then as you can see, there'd probably be some nice to have some spacing on this. So we could also give this a space Y of 8. That'll space it out a little bit. And then also some padding. So I'll say padding of top and bottom. We could do 8 as well. Okay, so it looks a little bit nicer. Now we have all the cards displayed here. Now I do want to commit what we have, and then we're going to fix the styling of this app because there's something going on. So I'm going to go ahead and just say ability to search and display memes and cards. Okay, so let's fix the cards. I think the issue is that our app doesn't really have this concept of themes yet. And so adding a theme provider and just a toggle button could allow us to fix this to make it work for dark mode and light mode. So let's type in dark mode and let's go to the Next.js guide and they'll walk you through how to get this set up. So let's just install this. All right, next themes, install that. And then we need a themes provider. Let's go over here to our app and we'll say themes provider. And then let's go ahead and create a themes provider. So let's go here and just say theme provider.tsx. Okay. And then we could use that theme provider in our providers file that we created a little while ago. So let's go to providers and let's wrap all of our stuff with a theme provider. Okay. So cut that, put it down here, auto import, whatever we need. And then also keep in mind that there's like the suppress hydration warning that you typically have to put on the HTML. So let's make sure that this is set on the layout. Okay. And then they give you an example of a toggle button. So we can simply just grab this whole chunk of code and we could put it in the UI here. We could just say toggle theme.tsx and export function. Actually, I'm going to copy the whole thing. So it's called a mode toggle. In fact, let me just rename this the mode toggle to keep it consistent with what's being exported. And all we have to do is we can go to our header and let's add that somewhere. So like we have a drop down menu, maybe like to the left of it. We'll just add this in and see if it works. It work fine. And then let's go back to our app over here. We got a theme toggle. We can do light mode. Cool. So now we fixed dark mode. But there is an issue with light mode. It doesn't seem like the app knows about light mode too well. So going to global CSS, I noticed that there's this like hard-coded body styling. I think this shouldn't be there. Let's just save this and go back. And now light mode and dark mode is working fine. I don't know if there's like a bug when I installed ShadCN or something, but that shouldn't have been there. And then also the sheet that we did earlier, this is going to be messed up with light mode and dark mode. So we need to go through and find where we did the sheet, which was, let's type in sheet here. Here it is in the content. Let's get rid of that hard-coded coloring because that needs to be dynamic. I'm also really confused what's going on with these sheets. I'm just going to hard code this. Like right now, BG background just doesn't seem to be working for some reason. No clue why, but we're going to go ahead and just say BG white. And if we're in dark mode, we're going to say BG black. All right, so that should hopefully fix it. A couple of things we should probably also do is when this thing scales down, notice that it's not very responsive. So making your code responsive, making your app responsive is probably something you should try to do. So let's go back to our list. We have like that list component, right? Results list. And then over here, what we could do is when we get to a smaller screen size, we want to make it just one column. And so if you're not familiar with how you do responsive design in Tailwind, basically design as if you're on mobile first. Okay, so this is mobile first. And notice that it would be nice if we had more padding to the left and the right of this entire thing. So we could actually say px of 4, put some padding around those cards. In fact, that should probably be on the whole page itself. So let's undo that. Let's go back to the page and we'll say padding x is 4, just so it's not like hugging the walls of the container. And then as we scale up, we want to add more columns because right now it doesn't really do that. Okay. So now what we could do is go back to the results list. And then as we're on larger devices, so I could say like small, colon, grid calls 2. Let's save that and see what happens. Okay, there you go. So it goes from 1. And then as we get to even larger screens, we could say, so basically we have like on phone, it's 1, on smaller devices, it's 2, and on larger devices above, it's 3. So now we could actually see it be kind of a little bit responsive here, which I don't have a third card to even test out with, but we can just imagine. So let's fix a little bug real quick. Notice that up here we have a query string of q equals b, but it's not like showing here. So a user doesn't really know that they're doing like a search. So we should probably have this search input contain the value of whatever we're actually like bookmarked, right? So one way we could do this is we're going to grab out this input because I want to make this into a client component. So I'm going to go ahead and just say like search input.tsx, export function, just do this and bring in all that stuff. And then we're going to cut this out and I'll say export function search input. And then we're going to return that. Make sure you auto import some stuff. And then this is going to be a client component because we want to get the params, so like the query string. And we could basically say use search params here, which is a hook that's built into Next, where we could get Q. So I think over here for default value, we could say default value, and then we could say query string dot get Q. Or yeah, we could just default it to nothing, I guess. Okay, so now hopefully we could bring this in, search inputs, like this. And if we were to refresh our page, notice that the B shows up now. All right, so let's improve the cards a little bit. There's some stuff that we don't even really need to display, like card description. I don't think that even makes sense to have. So like, just delete that. For card title, for right now, we're going to say file.name. But eventually, I think we can probably add in some custom metadata that you could potentially use instead to have it be a nicer name. For example, we could click on this and then we could do some custom metadata and we could add one. And for the custom metadata, we could just go here and let's give this a display name. We'll call this display name. And for the default value, we won't add anything yet. Let's just do a submit. Okay, and that allows us to basically add a display name to all of our custom assets. So let's go back over here and let's try that. Click here. Let's double click on the image again, and then we are going to modify that custom metadata, and we'll call this bad button choices. Okay, so we'll save this, and now we should be able to go back to the, instead of the name here, we can actually say custom metadata, and then we could say display name. If that's not defined, we could fall back on the name. Go back to our app. And then it says bad button choices, right? So a user could potentially put a input when they're uploading their meme, their base meme image, and they could specify what they want the custom display name to be. Okay, so now for card footer, I think it'd be nice to add a button so that a user could potentially modify or click a button to generate a meme using this. So we'll say button and we'll say customize. Now we got a button here, and if you click on it, technically that could take us to like a separate page that allows you to start adding some text overlays and hard-coded positions maybe, but we'll figure that out. So on the button itself, we're going to say as child, because this is going to become a clickable link button. So let's say link. I think we can use the file ID. Just go ahead and auto import this. So now if we click on customize, it should take us to a customized route with that file ID. And then later this page, we could implement it to basically show like a customized builder UI where we can have some type of like images, some fields displayed and then the image over here, and it does some overlays and refreshes it live for us. So now that we have a basic way to grab images using searching from ImageKit, I think it'd be nice to have a button here that basically allows users to upload new images, right? Because right now you have to go to the dashboard and like we have to change that page up a little bit. So I'm going to add a button here that is going to show a dialog that has like a form in it. Let's find the search results that we've been working on. And I'm going to go ahead and just wrap this in a flex. And then I'm going to say item center, justify between, and then we will add a button here. So this button is just going to say click me for right now, but I want to make sure that this shows up well in the UI. Okay. So instead of saying click me, what we could say is upload base meme. And then when you click it, I want to show a dialog. Okay, so in ShadCN, very easy to get a dialog going. Now there's dialog and there's alert dialog. So I think what we want is a dialog. This is a good example of it. So it has like a field, some stuff. So what we could do is we could have like a name or a display name, and then we can have our image file upload. So again, let's install this. I'll copy this command, and then we're going to go and run it. This, while that's adding, we're going to go and just grab this. And what I like to do with buttons is I'm going to go ahead and make a component here, and it's going to be called upload meme button.jsx. And this button, we're going to go ahead and just say use client, and then we want to export a function called upload meme button. We're also going to import all those dialog stuff I talked about. We probably want to import the button as well. And then we're going to return this button from that for right now. Okay. Bear with me, we're going to get this all working. So let's use that upload button meme at this location. And then we'll import it, go to it. And so the way the dialog kind of works is you define a dialog and that dialog has a trigger in it. So instead of returning a button, we're going to return a dialog that has a button for the trigger. Now I think we could say as child on this as well, which can allow us to click the button and have it be styled properly. So let's make sure this works. I'm going to go back to the app. And then let's open this up, and you'll notice that the styling is also messed up on this. I think something went terribly wrong when I did ShadCN install. But you'll see that there's these two things in our global CSS. In fact, let's just delete them because I think this is causing this to be like overwritten. So let's delete that. And then I think everything should be good now. Let's check out dark mode. Check out, you know, I think that's going to fix our other issue that we had with this, the side navigation. Before I had to hard code this. So let's actually go to the header real quick and go to that sheet, because I had to add that like hard coded stuff inside of here. So instead we'll see BG background, we'll get rid of that dark, and let's see if this works. Okay, now it's working. Yeah, I don't know what happened. I mean, I follow the ShadCN docs, maybe there's a bug, but you know, this is software engineering. They're gonna run into bugs along the way and you have to figure out how to debug them. Okay, so inside of this dialog, what we want to do is just go ahead and put some text. So instead of saying, are you sure? What we're going to do is we're going to say, upload your meme image. And inside the description, we can just go ahead and say, this is a meme image anyone on the site can build upon. Okay. And then over here, we'll add a form. And what we're going to do is on the main page, if you remember, we have like the ability for someone to already upload something. So we can actually grab this out and put it inside of that form here. And the whole set name thing, that can go away for right now. Let's just go check this out. So now we got a actual input file like we did on the home page, but we can also add a input box. So if you remember, we have this input component. We just import that. And then this could have a name of display name. Okay, this placeholder could say display name. We could say it's required. And let's just check this out. Okay, so now we have this. Now, if you go to ShadCN, I think there's labels too, which I don't know if we have installed. Let's just check this out. Do we have a label? Oh, we don't. Let's go to ShadCN, go to the docs, type in label, let's find it. And again, we're going to add this in. Paste that in there. And now we should be able to basically pull it in. Like this. Let me go ahead and import this. And then this will be HTML4 display name, which means we need to add an ID here of display name. And then we'll say display name. All right, let's test this out. So open up the modal, or the dialog, I guess it's called. And now we have an input with a label. You can click on the label to select the input, which is accessible. And we should probably add a close button and a upload button. So let's go back to the example of the dialog. And I believe Okay, so edit, they have a save changes. Down here, they have a close. So let's look at the code here and just find where they do close. So you can basically say dialog footer and then add a close. So let's go down here. I'll say dialog footer. Import dialog close. And now if we go back to our dialog, we should be able to just close it by clicking a button. But what we also want to do is add the ability to upload. So we probably want an upload button, which we could potentially just add here. We'll say button, we'll say type submit, and we'll say upload. But in order for this to work, we're going to have to wrap the entire thing in a form. So we'll put the footer inside of the form so that when someone submits this, it'll submit the form, which means that we need to say on submit here, and we need to like handle some of this logic. So in our case, we're going to put an E. We'll say E prevent default here. Now at this point, I think we want to customize this upload a little bit, because the moment you select the file, it automatically uploads to our media library. And we kind of want to control that, right? So if you go to the docs, we're going to have to basically not show this at all and bring in a ref. So we'll add that to here. And we're going to have to also create that ref. So I'll say like upload ref. I'll call it upload input ref, because I do believe they're wrapping an input and this is like a pass through ref. So let's go up here and I'll say const this is equal to use ref. And we'll pass it an input element, make sure we auto import this. And let's scroll down. Okay, so now we have access to the ref object. And basically we need to we probably need to manually invoke this thing when a user clicks on this upload button. Okay, so let's go up here. So the first thing we need to do is get the current. So I'll say upload input ref.current. And in the docs, they just do a click on it. So doing a click will basically upload this to ImageKit, which is nice. So when the user submits the form, it's going to go ahead and just click on this button behind the scenes. So like you'll see here, if I don't have a display name typed in, it'll ask me to do one. And then I can also say testing here. And if I click upload, we'll get the image upload. So what we want to do at this point is, I'm probably going to change a little bit of stuff. Instead of it saying upload, I'll say like upload select and upload file or image. Okay, so it's a little more apparent that it's going to ask you to select the image and then it's going to upload for you. And then also we could probably put some spacing between the form inputs and these buttons over here. So like I'm going to wrap all this in a div. Okay, all this stuff can be wrapped in a div. And then the reason I'm doing this is so on the form, I can give it some space Y of 8 or something to make those buttons be a little bit lower. In fact, okay, that's a little bit too much. We'll do that. And then on the footer itself, we're going to say flex justify between. I want to push this to the far right. For some reason, it's not going over there. So we got to figure out why that's not working. It had to justify start. Okay. No, I just do justify end here. I think that'd be good enough. Okay, so that looks like a normal modal to me. Okay, so we'll basically, someone will come in here, they have to put a display name, and I'll say like balloons. And I'll say select an upload image. That'll open up the file selector. And then eventually, we'll get a success callback down here. And what we could do is we could just redirect the user based on the new file ID they got. So like we're going to have to go and say const router is equal to use router, and that's going to come from next navigation. Down here, we'll say on success, we'll say router.push, customize the response.file name, or sorry, file ID. On an error, I don't know if we have to even do anything. Let's go upload base meme, and I'm going to go ahead in the display name, I'll say holding me back, and then we'll select the balloons one. And that will upload. It was successful. It redirected me back to the customize page, which everything seems like it's working pretty good. And now if I were to type in B, we should get a couple of results that come back. So now if we look at this image, I think we forgot to add the custom metadata, but you'll see that it did upload this, which is good. So let's go back and fix that. We forgot to add the custom metadata. So how would we do that? Well, basically, We were adding code here. I don't think we need this anymore. Like we just need to click on this and submit it. But what we could do is on here, we could actually give it a value now, and we could give it a display name, and that will come from up here. So I can say const display name. We're going to go ahead and import that from state. And then when it changes, so on change, we're going to set it. So now like when someone types into the input, we have that on state, and we can use that for custom metadata. And we could simply just pass in display name here. So now when the file gets uploaded, it should have a custom display name. And before we test this out, I do want to add some type of spinner or loader to this button when we try to submit it. So on the upload mean button, we probably want to add some type of state variable called like is uploading. And when we click on submit, what we're going to do is we're going to set this to true. And we're going to display something inside of the button when it is currently uploading. So scroll down to the button, which is right here. And going to Tailwind CSS, like we could just go ahead and grab this SVG here, like just copy the whole SVG. And for right now, I'll just put a function here called spinner. And then we're going to return that SVG. Just go ahead and we make it a little bit more JSX compliant here. So make these class name. And now inside the button itself, we could actually just go and display that spinner. So if I save this and go back to the app, we should see a spinner, but we only want to display this when we are uploading. Let's just go here and say is uploading, and we'll conditionally show that. That should make sense. And yeah, I mean, that should be pretty good. The only thing else we probably want to do is the button itself. We should disable the button if we're uploading. So make sure we have it disabled on there, and that should turn it off when we're uploading. And then of course, when this is done, we should say is uploading to false. And then also here, if there's an error, we should probably set it to false too. So let's try that out. Let's go ahead and upload the base meme. I'll say holding me back. And then we want to select and upload an image. And then we're going to select on that balloons meme. And just go ahead and upload that. Notice that the button was disabled and we showed a spinner. If we go back to the media library and just refresh, you will see that we now have that upload that came from the modal. And if we go and check out the custom metadata, you'll see that it also says hold me back, which is awesome. So now we actually have like ways to customize the metadata from the client when users upload the images. So another thing that ImageKit allows you to do is you can actually attach tags to your images when you upload them. And also they have AI under the hood that can auto tag your images. But what we want to do is add another field just to allow people to add a comma delimited list of tags. And then we're going to attach that to the image so that we can search for it later. So on the upload button, let's just go ahead and copy and paste these labels and inputs. And instead of display name, we will call this tags. And then we'll have this call a set tags state variable at the top. So let's scroll up to the top a little bit. And then we will make one called const tags and set tags. And let's see if this shows up in the UI. Let's click on this. And now we have a tag. So just to space this out a little bit, let's just wrap this in a div. And this one could be in a div as well. And we'll save that. And for right now, we'll just go ahead and put a little bit of margin bottom on this. So just like space it out a little bit. And instead of saying display name inside of here for a placeholder, we should probably say a comma delimited list of tags. And honestly, I'll probably make this required too. Okay. And since this is required, let's just double check it. We'll say testing, and this also says that it's required. And we're not going to do very sophisticated like error handling and validation rules on this. We just want to like assume the user is going to type in the right stuff. We can actually go down here and just go ahead and say tags. And we're going to pass in tags and we're going to split them by commas. I'll just go ahead and say split. And by default, I believe this is going to replace any spaces with hyphens, and we'll see that when we upload those. But another thing I want to do is I want to take the display name and just go ahead and add that as a tag as well. So let's go down here. And we're going to go and just change this to an array, pass in the display name, but then spread it with the tags that the user has typed in. So now going to our UI, if I were to go and upload a hotline bling type of meme, and I'll say Drake, I'll say comparison, because you know different memes have different use cases, I guess you could say. So let's select the Drake hotline bling. Here we go. And then go back to the media library and let's just refresh. And you will see that we have our image, but more specifically, if you go to tags, we have hotline bling, we have Drake, and we have comparison. And so in the UI, in our header, we can actually search by tags now, which would be a lot more useful than like searching by a display name in the metadata. So definitely search by tags. And then also, I want to demo a really cool feature in ImageKit, which is the auto tag feature. So using AI, it can look at an image and just kind of give you some tags that correlate to the image. So we're going to go and just use Google and AWS. We'll do auto tag. And then if we look at the tags, you'll notice we get a bunch for jacket, head, coat, face. Now these might not be very applicable to our use case for a meme generator, but I can see if you're building like an e-commerce site or like a photo album library, like this would be great because now it automatically figures out like what's in the image and then it allows the users to search for those later on if they need to. So now let's refactor this to, instead of needing like an actual like file name, we could have it search by tag. So let's go to the search page, and instead of doing a search query by name, we could actually do one using tags. And so let's go here and we'll say tags. And what we need to do is pass in a comment separated list of tags. Any files matching those tags are included in the result response. If no tags are matched, the files will not be included. So basically we could just add in whatever the user typed in, and that should be good enough. So now if we go to the search bar and like, let's say we wanted to get Drake, we could literally just search for any of these tags like comparison or Drake or face if we wanted to. Let's try typing in comparison and make sure he shows up. Okay, he does. Let's try Drake. Let's try a jacket, and he shows up as well. And you can also add like a comma delimited list. So let's actually go to balloons real quick, and we're going to add some tags to that. So let's try this one. We'll go to tags and let's just add one. And notice that all the tags that we previously used for that Drake meme show up here. So ImageKit is keeping track of all your tags, and it makes it very easy to add new tags. So we're going to add comparison to this one, but then another one we could probably add is like balloons, I guess. We'll save that. And the reason we're doing that is if you go up here, you could technically type in comparison and enter that. We get 2 results back. So now if we go to the top and type in Drake, we should get back Drake, but then also I can type in balloons, and then we'll get back balloons as well. So you can kind of search for multiple tags in this search bar as well, which is awesome. We've gotten this far without even having to create a database of our own, right? So a lot of the stuff that we're doing is built right into ImageKit, which is pretty cool. All right, we made some progress. Let's just go ahead and commit what we have. I'm gonna go ahead and just add all this stuff in, and I will say adding the ability to upload and search over meme images. So I guess at this point, it would be good to work on the customized page. So a user can come in, they can search through memes, and then let's say they want to make one with the hold me back meme. So let's just click on customize, which will take us to a broken page. And we need to create a customized page. So in Next.js, we can go ahead and just make a folder called customize. And then we're going to take in a file ID. And then inside of this, we'll do a page.tsx. Okay, and then what we want to do is probably just copy an existing page. So I'm just going to copy the search page, and we'll call this the customize page. And then instead of taking a search params, I think it's just params if I remember correctly. And we could simply just say this is a file ID, hopefully. So it looks like instead of list files, we can actually say .get file details. Yeah, I probably want that one, right? And then we're going to get the file by ID. And just to make sure this works, let's just console log it, and then we can get rid of some of the stuff. I'll just say customize will be the title. You don't need all this anymore. And then over here, we'll comment this out. So delete that. Now, one thing we should do is that we're creating this ImageKit thing in 2 places, right? You should keep your code as dry as possible when it makes sense to. So doing the same thing in 2 different places just doesn't seem like a good approach. So quick little fix. Let's go to a lib folder here. I'm going to say ImageKit.ts. We're simply going to export ImageKit, just like that. Okay, so now let's go back to here, and we don't want to import this anymore. We're going to import it from our lib folder. Awesome. And then same thing with this customize. We don't want to just define that twice all over the place. We're going to import it from our lib folder. All right, so now let's look at our console. I think this is going to be a server component. So we're going to go and look at the terminal, and we get all the same data that we saw in the other implementation. Okay. So now we want to kind of display the file, and then we also want to display like a panel or a form. So over here, we could basically make a form. like this. And then over here, we could say like ImageKit image, which we're going to do a lot of the same stuff that we did before. Say this file.url. Make sure I import this. In fact, let's just copy how we're doing it in another component instead of like having to remember how to do this. So we're copy this whole thing in, and this should work for the most part. I'm going to call this file instead of files. And now we have it. And for URL import, endpoint, make sure you import that. Okay, so again, this won't work unless you're in a client component. So we probably need to just go ahead and make a whole customize panel, something like that. And make sure it's TSX, not TS. So customize panel, we're going to go ahead and just pull this stuff out. We're going to say use client. We'll say export function customize panel. And then we're going to return a fragment, or I guess we could use a div that has a form on one side and this ImageKit component on the next. And then make sure you just auto import some stuff. And then, yeah, this should take in a file for sure. And then what we could do is we are going to display the customize panel like this, and we'll say file is equal to file. So again, this is like the pattern with Next.js. You'll typically have a top level page component, which you fetch a lot of the data that you think you'll need in your subcomponents, and you pass it in. And sometimes you can make more React server components for like your children. But this is the simplest approach. Like basically treat this as your loader, fetch all the data up front, and then pass that in as props to whatever needs it. We are getting an issue though. It says only plain objects can be passed to client components from server components. Okay, so there is something on this thing that we're printing out, which it doesn't like. So let's try to look at this real quick and figure out what it doesn't like about this. Honestly, I don't know, but what we could potentially do is just pass in some small stuff that we might care about for now. So instead of passing the whole file in, what we could pass in could be like the file ID. In fact, we don't need a key here, so we just need a file path. And this could be a file object dot file path. So we'll do name like this, and then I think that should be good, right? In fact, I think we could actually just keep this simple. We could just do a pick, right? If you're good at TypeScript, you could just do a pick. We'll say pick from the file object type. We want, I don't know, file path and name. In fact, I'm doing this in the wrong place. I'm doing this in the wrong place. Okay, so there. Okay, so now we have to basically make sure that we only pass in the file path and the name for right now. So we could just say file path is file.filepath and then name like this. Again, this is all because there's an issue with React server components where you can't pass like giant objects. You have to pass plain JavaScript objects. Okay, there we go. So we have our little meme displaying now. And what we could do is we're going to go back over here to the customize panel, and we want to give this probably a grid calls to. And we could gap of 8 it, I guess. Okay, so now we have a form on the left and the meme on the right. And then for the form, what we could do is we could have some inputs. So typically a meme, like you'll have like locations of where you can put text overlays. And so in this particular one, typically it's like you put a text overlay here, and then you might put a text overlay here or something. So I guess we could try to do that, and maybe we just make it really, really customizable so a user can basically position it wherever they want. So let's start with that. We're going to try to add one input inside of this form. Okay, so if we were to make an input, let's just go ahead and add an input here, and we'll import this. We'll also add a label, and we'll give this a label of overlay, text overlay 1. And we'll just go ahead and give this like a text overlay 1. Do that. Okay, so now someone can type here, and what we want to do is as they type, we need to basically send over the information to ImageKit so it can overlay the text somewhere on this meme. Okay, so how do you do that? Well, we've already done that before using transformations. So I don't think we're doing a transformation anymore. So So let me go to the main page, and I think if I go back and get history, we have like an example of how we did a transformation. Here it is. So yeah, let's just grab all this, grab that transformation, and we're going to go back to our customize panel. We're going to paste that in. Okay, so now when the image loads, you'll say hello world, but we want to dynamically use the text right here when we interpolate. Okay, so we're going to use some state. We'll say const text overlay 1. We'll import some state. And then on the input, we'll say on change, we want to basically set that state, and on value, we'll do that. Okay. And then we're going to go, and instead of saying hello world hard coded, we're going to interpolate that transformation. So I do think there's an issue when you have an empty string here. It actually, ImageKit can't handle that. So we're going to use a computed. So I'll say transformations is equal to an empty array. And then I'm just going to go ahead and just dynamically push the transformations in if it's defined. And then we could just show the transformations here. Okay, so now I'm going to type in like, hello world, what is up? Okay, so that works pretty good. Now technically you could add like a debounce, but that's going to go open up a whole can of worms of like adding a use effect and a use callback and like restructuring how this kind of works. I'm not going to go down that path right now because this works pretty good. Some other things we should do is like we should be able to position it. And the question is should the meme have metadata on it itself that knows where things can be positioned, or should we just let the user be able to like position it based on a slider? And I think just positioning it based on a slider might be good enough. Go to ShadCN and look at the sliders. Okay, so we could add a slider for like X and the slider for Y. So someone can just basically choose where on the meme they want to put something. Let's just add this in real quick. And I will just clear this, add in the slider, and then we will import the slider component like this. And then we are going to add the slider underneath the input. Okay, looking at the UI, we now have a slider here, but now we got to hook it in the state and then also figure out how to like do the transformation based on the slider position. So we're going to go ahead and just say value is equal to, we should probably keep track of the text overlay X position. Okay. And we'll keep it as 0 for right now. And then we basically want to use that text overlay X position. We'll say on change. We're going to go ahead and set that. In fact, I don't even know how you know if it changed or not. I think I have to go to the Radix documentation and they'll tell us how this works. So we have value, also on value change. What is this going to give us? On value change. So I think we want on value change, and then this could probably be the new value, and then this could just be a V here. And it looks like this is an array. So like I think I might have to destructure that. Okay, let's try that. I'm going to go ahead and just render out the text position over here and see what we get. So now if I slide this, we go from 0 to 1, which is pretty nice. Now I think on this form itself, like we should probably just give it some spacing. There we go. And then also give this thing a label. So like we're going to, on top of the slider, I'll say like text position, text1 X position. Go ahead and give it an ID and an HTML4. Okay. So if we go to the docs, they'll tell us how we can position, basically just add an LX with a number filter. But for us, I think it would make more sense if we use positional parameters. So if you go here, you can actually use something called BW multiplier, and that's like a percentage from what I understand. So let's try that out. If we go back to the app, and we're going to say, I think it's LX, and then we could do like our multiplier here, and do 0.4 and see where that takes it. And there is an issue. For some reason, this width and height we have added here doesn't seem like it works with the transformations. But now we can position it relative to the slider, I think. So we could just go and get the value of the slider. So here I'll say like X position decimal is equal to this. And then we could just, I think, interpolate this. And we'll say toFixed of 1. Like, I think we only want 1 decimal here. So let's try that out. There, we can slide it all the way to wherever we want it. Which is pretty cool. So now we can actually do the exact same thing with the Y. So I'm gonna go ahead and just like change this to a Y. And then we will do the same thing here. We'll do a Y. We'll do a Y. Quickly take the decimal here and we'll say ly bw mul this. Okay. Also probably toFixed of 1 as well. And then what changes? We also need a slider for that. So let's grab the slider for the Y direction. And then we're just going to go ahead and like just update all this stuff to be Y. Yeah, and in fact, I don't think we need to display the position here. So like now we can actually type in like what is up. We can slide it wherever we want. Let's test Y. Look at that. That's pretty cool, right? We can actually make memes by like sliding some stuff around. Now I think the step is by 1 right now, which is kind of problematic. And so what we might need to do, instead of toFixed of 1, we might need to do a toFixed of 2. I think the 1 is causing it to truncate a little bit too much information. So let's do a 2. And now we have a little bit more control over the exact position that it should be in. Okay, so now it would be nice if this was like dynamic. Right now it's like, let's say we had a meme that had 3 different places you could put text. It might be good to be able to dynamically add more of these components so that we can control the text individually. So that might be a little bit challenging. Let's just try to figure out how to do this. We basically want to take these 3 things, so the text and the 2 sliders, and wrap them in a component so that we can easily reuse it. So I'm just going to make another one called like customize text. Actually, I'm going to call it text overlay. .tsx. So I'm going to say export function text overlay, and then we are going to pull out all this stuff. So I'll just paste all that in. Probably grab a majority of all this code. Definitely need to use client at the top too. And let's figure out what we need to actually do to get this working. So again, instead of saying like text overlay 1, we could literally just say this will be the text overlay, and this will be the text overlay setter. I'm basically just going to get rid of all the 1s because this whole component is basically contained inside of itself, right? So a little bit of busy work we'll get through here. Okay. And so now when we have a text overlay, which I should probably call this correctly, what we can do is basically create a transformation array. So like we're making these transformation objects, and this actually probably needs to live at a higher level. So like I'm doing this live, right? So like I'm probably going to have to figure this out in my head a little bit, but I think we can actually say transformations like this. And then that could actually be controlled and changed based on these overlays here. So let's just comment some of this stuff out. I probably should have committed before I started doing this refactoring. I'm probably going to break everything. But let's commit. Let's do this. Let's go ahead and comment all this out. We want to make sure we import the text overlay. I guess we could pass in the file. That's probably fine. And return this. I wonder if instead of storing an array, let's actually just store an empty object. Like it'll be like a map. We're going to just try to figure this out. So basically, we're going to pass in a on update. And so whenever the transformation of like either the text, the X or the Y changes, we could simply just like set the transformation if text is defined like this. I think we could just call set transformations, and then we could just go ahead and say like get the current transformations. And then we're going to return the current, but we're also going to, I'm just going to hard code an index real quick. I'll just do like a 1. And then we're going to pass in raw like this. I'll just hard code this as a string of text 1. Honestly, this will just be a record of string any right now. I guess I could say a transformation. Okay, bear with me. This is a mess, but we will fix it up. So text overlay needs to take in on update. On update is going to be a function that takes in text x and number y. And I think what I could do is like in all of these, I could set the overlay, but then I could simply just like on update, get the text overlay value, get the current x position decimal, and also get the current y position. So I'm going to try doing this. I think it'll work. Is there a better way to probably achieve this? Maybe. But we'll just see if we can get it working first. Okay, so we're going to do that. We'll use the current value of text overlay, and then you'll use the new value for x. And then we'll do the same thing over here. We're going to go ahead and just like wrap this. And instead, we're going to say, do the x and the y. I think actually, if we want to return like the decimal, maybe we should do that instead. So let's just refactor this a little bit. All right, so this, hopefully this works. Basically, we are going to now pass in, we don't need to pass in file, but we are going to pass in this on update. And so basically, if anyone changes some of that internal state, it gets called back with a callback, which allows us to modify this array. Now, one thing we do need to remember to do is that if the current text is not defined, I guess technically we could just fall back on an empty string like this, and that'll be fine. It just won't render anything. So that could be a quick little fix for that. Okay, so now we have an issue because transformations expects a array, but we're passing an object. So I'm gonna go ahead and just say like transformations array, and we can just get all the values from it. Okay, and then we're gonna go down here, we're gonna pass that in. Okay, I don't know what this is supposed to be. I'm just gonna hard code this as raw, which is a string. Okay. All right, moment of truth. We just did a bunch of crazy refactoring, but let's make sure this works. Testing, I can slide it. Okay, so pretty good. Now, why do we do all that work? Because now what I can do is I can just copy and paste this like this and change this to be like text2 here. I can delete all this. Okay, and now we have full memes on the page, which is nice because now I can actually have a button here and people can just add in as many text things as they want and position them all independently, okay? So that's the main benefit of why we did that. And then over here, we could actually get this like a card component. It might make it look a little bit nicer. And then inside the card component, we could probably just give the whole thing like some padding. We'll keep it simple. Padding of 4. There we go. And then inside of all this, I mean, like we could probably just wrap these in divs. Because I want to put a little bit of space in between all this stuff. So here I'll just say like space y of 4. Okay, so that looks pretty good, right? I can just position memes independently from each other and make them be wherever I want them to be. And then I should be able to basically open the image in a new tab. And you'll see that it has all the transformations baked into the URL string, which is pretty cool. And I could share that with other people if I wanted to. But for right now, we did a lot of changes. Let's just go ahead and add this all in. So I'm going to say adding the ability to customize your own memes. So you know what we can do to really just easily make this be configurable is I could just say const number of overlays, and we're going to start it off with 2. So now what we could do is we're going to change this form to a div, and then I'm going to go ahead and just say new array number of overlays dot fill, which is just some empty strings. It doesn't matter. And then we're going to go ahead and get the index. And then for every single element of this array, let's just go ahead and like move up the text overlay there and delete that. Okay, and so I think I'm missing a curly brace, missing a parenthesis there. Okay, so now we need to add a key here. So we'll add an index here, and then this thing probably needs an index as well. So I'll say like index plus 1. And we'll go to the text overlay and we'll add in that index. And the reason we're adding an index here is so that we can like display it all over this component. Okay, so I'm just going to tab through this and let cursor update everything for me because it's tedious work. And now what we could do is change this to 1. And we can also add a button. So like down here, we could just literally add a button that when someone clicks it, it increments the number of overlays by 1. I might say add another overlay. All right, so now I'm going to say testing. I'll click add another one. And we can position these things independently, just like that. And then probably we need the ability for deleting the overlays. Oh, there's a little bug. I think this is hard-coded to 1, so I think we need to actually interpolate index here. Let's do that. And so now they'll both live on the page at the same time. Okay, and then finally, we probably wanted the ability to remove the last overlay. We're going to keep this simple. We could probably make this a lot more sophisticated. Remove last overlay. And then we'll just go ahead and decrement it by 1. And then we'll say variant is destructive. Okay, there we go. I'll just say remove last instead, and then we can just simply say flex, and we'll say gap of 4 on this. Okay. And now I can add one, I can remove one. Although I will say when you remove the last, it doesn't seem like it updates the transformation. So I think to fix that bug, basically here, when we reduce the number of overlays, we're going to have to get the last index, which used to be in the transforms, and just clear it. So I think we have to do something like this. So basically, set the transformations, and we're just going to set this to undefined, the last index to undefined. And I don't know why this is complaining. I could probably say as any here. That'll probably make it happy. And I'll just don't care about that. Let's try this. So now like the issue is that I added some text, and then when I deleted it, it wasn't actually like clearing the transformations. Okay, that one didn't work. I think what we actually could do instead is spread it and then delete it. Yeah, that's definitely a better approach. Okay, so just clone the whole array and then delete the last one completely and then return that. So I think that'll actually work a little bit better. Let's do a hard refresh here and just add a couple. Like this. Okay, so GG showing up, and now if I delete the last one, it goes away. And then it also, let's check out this one. If I delete that one, it goes away. I can add another one, and it works good. Awesome. Let's add this. I'm going to say adding ability to delete last overlay. All right, so let's continue adding on some features to this. So one of the things that ImageKit provides is that you can actually have a background highlight on the text. So if we go to the docs over here, you'll see that here is the background, right? So BG-white will add in a background. Additionally, you can use hex, and you can use like opacity. So that's something that we could try to add in to our page. Basically, you just add this filter. Should be pretty easy. So let's try that out. I think we could bring in like a React color picker. I think that would make it look pretty cool if we had a section here that said like background color, and maybe it had a checkbox so you could turn it on. And if it is on, we show a color picker. So let's go to the customize panel. And what we need to do here is we need to figure out inside of the text overlay component that we created, we probably want to add some type of checkbox or color picker. So let's go ahead and go to ShadCN real quick. Let's go and get their checkbox. I know ShadCN has a checkbox, so we could just basically grab this code. All right, there it is. We installed the checkbox, and then it's as simple as just like using it like this. So like if we go, for example, just add it right here. Add the checkbox and just import it from our components directory, and then go back to our app. Here we go. We got a little checkbox. Now I would want to see how they added the label here. So let's go to here, and it would make more sense to add a label as well. In fact, let's just grab this whole section. We could just reuse this whole thing, and we'll put it there. And something we want to do is we want to put this left and right. So all of this stuff, I'm going to go ahead and just put it in a flex like this and wrap it. And look at the app. Here it is. Accept terms and conditions. What we actually want to say, apply text background. If you click it, what I plan to do is have a state variable to show a color picker. And then also we could probably put some space between this so that this has more space. Yeah, let's just go ahead and say justify between, and that'll push it over here. And then if this thing is on, we could just go ahead and show a color picker. And also we could probably have this be a flex grow. So if you don't know about that, basically on your children components, you can say flex of 1. I think flex grow is like kind of the same thing. And that'll grow that input box all the way up to here. But what we also want to do is put some gap because it feels a little crowded. Okay, so now when we click on this thing, let's show a color picker. Now I don't have one off the top of my head, but this one seems like it has almost 12,000 stars. So I mean, why not just use this? Let's install it. Okay, that's getting installed. And then you basically just pick the color picker that you want. Now, in terms of which one we should actually use, I mean, that's kind of up to you. You can get as complex as this if you want to. You can keep it simple. This Twitter one looks pretty promising, so maybe we'll just do the Twitter one. So let's find the Twitter component. It's called a Twitter picker. And I think what we could do is just, if this checkbox is on, so what we're going to do is we're going to say on checked changed, and then we also want like a state variable here. So I'm going to say like apply text background is a state variable. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. And then we're just going to go ahead and get the value of it, and we just like set it. It gives us a Boolean, but for some reason we have to actually like do it like this for some reason. I think you might have to say as Boolean. I don't know why this is make sure this works. Okay, so now you can check it, and that's updating state, and then that is reflecting the re-render. So if it's on, we want to basically show that Twitter thing. So I'm down here, I'll say Twitter picker. I think that's what we called it. Now it's not auto importing for some reason, so let's go back to the docs, and we're gonna go ahead and bring in that thing. So we'll say Twitter picker from React Color. For some reason it can't find this, so I'm gonna go ahead and just see if it has the types so I can install them, and then restart TypeScript. Hopefully it finds those types. Hopefully we get the Twitter picker. Seems like it's now existing. That's good. Okay, so if, and conditionally, if this thing is on, we'll show it. Pretty straightforward, right? Conditionally show this Twitter picker if it's on. Let's go back over to here, and then we'll click on this. I don't like how this is changing the entire like layout of everything. I think I might actually give this like a flex column here. So flex call, just so that it's all in the same column here. And then for this needs to be a flex, wrapping those, and then also just give it a little bit of a gap of 4. This could be a space Y of 4. Again, this is one of the things you can literally spend like hours tweaking the UI, making it perfect, but we want it to get it functional, and this seems like it's pretty functional. So how do we get the actual hex? Because if you remember in ImageKit, the way you can change it is you can apply a bg hyphen the hex value and then a number if you want to do alpha. So the hex, I think we can actually just, in the Twitter picker itself, we can apply some type of state. So I think color and on change is how you can kind of do that. So we're going to say, bring a state variable in at the top and say const color and set color. In fact, I'm going to call it text bg color and just let cursor kind of do my work for me. There we go. And we're going to start off as white, like that. And then we're going to try using this. So I think we can just go down here, and for the Twitter picker, we can say color is equal to color, and then we're going to say on change set bg color like that. Now let's actually figure out what this is sending us. This is sending us some type of like Twitter props value, which if you hover over this, we have TypeScript. It should tell us what it is. It's a color changed handler. Okay, so value dot, we have hex, HSL, and RGB. So we are going to do hex. And I don't know if that's going to include a prefix or not. We'll find out. What we could also do, quick little debug, little hack, just print it out, right? Just render it to the screen. And you should be able to tell. Actually, I need to render out this to the screen. There we go. So now it says that it's hash 6fs, and then if I click on this, the hash is still included. So we might have to remove that because the way it works with ImageKit, they don't need the hex, but I think we're in a step in the right direction. Secondly, I think the text overlay should maybe like default to something. So I'm going to go ahead and just default this to like hello world. So when someone first adds something, like the text will show up. All right. And so if we were to apply background color, what we need to do is add that extra filter to the transition. So we know how to do that, right? We've done it before. Basically, we have an update call that we can call. So we're going to go a level up to on update. And this is also going to take in a BG color. Okay. And this could potentially be undefined or null or whatever. And so we're going to have to basically check to see if BG color is set, which potentially it might not be set. So we're going to go ahead and make it an optional string. We have to come in here to this raw filter, and then we basically need to interpolate BG. If this thing is set, then we're going to do a string of BG hyphen, and then the BG color. All right. Change that to a backtick so I can interpolate. And then if it's not set, we are literally going to do nothing. We'll just have an empty string. And then we definitely need a comma after this. So we'll add a comma, and that should be good. Now it may make a little bit more sense to actually move this out to like right here, like right before we do the font size. And this is a little hard to read, honestly. There might be a better way to achieve this, but we're just going to roll with it for now. And we need to go back to our component where we are passing on update, and this thing needs to take in a potential optional BG color. Okay, so everywhere that we call it, technically we should basically get the current BG color if it's set to be displayed. So like we have this boolean apply text background. So anywhere we call on update, we're going to have a computed actually. We're going to go ahead and say like if, we'll say BG color is equal to apply. Oh, look at that. It just basically tells us how to do it. So basically use the color if this is checked. If the checkbox is checked, use the color. Otherwise, we're going to say undefined. And then everywhere we call update, we could just go ahead and send in those BG colors, right? So every place we do update, we're going to send in the current BG color that's selected. Here we go. And then also here, this needs to call update as well. Just like that. But now we'll actually get the hex. And again, we'll have to run some similar type of logic here, unfortunately. Value.hex. And then we need to get rid of the hash symbol, right? So I'm going to say replace the hash symbol with nothing. I guess we could do undefined. I don't know why I was doing double. Okay. I just had a semicolon I had to delete there. All right. So hopefully everything works fine. Now I think we also need to get rid of this. So I'll replace the hash symbol with nothing. And there could be some code cleanup in this file. I will admit we could probably clean up this code a little bit. But again, let's just make it work. And then later you could potentially refactor it to make it right. And then you can make it fast if you want to do that. So let's try this out. So if I were to go ahead and click on this and then click on blue, that should have added, oh, there it is. We have the background color. Now my head is kind of hiding it. So let's just go ahead and move this. Okay. So I can change this to whatever I want. I could do like a light blue. I could do white. Now personally, I would probably find a way to add more padding to it. So let's go and read up on that because I'm guessing there's a way to add padding. You can add padding to the text overlay using a PA parameter. So PA of 10 adds a little bit of padding to it. I think we're going to do that. Let's go and find out where we add this. And we will say, over here, we'll just go ahead and say PA of 10, comma. Do a hard refresh. Make sure we apply that background color. And then there it is. It has a little bit of padding. So it looks nicer. Okay, so now the size of the text. How do we actually change the size of the text in our image? Because right now it's a little rough. So we're going to have to do something very similar to what we've just been doing. We'll have to add in a slider for text size, or maybe we can add an input box for text size or toggles or something, right? So now you're kind of getting the idea of like how this kind of works. let's just make sure a couple things work. If I were to disable this, does it change? It doesn't. So that's a little bug we'll have to fix. And the way we can fix that is when someone in the text overlay turns this off, so set apply text overlay, we need to also update and send back like the top level stuff. Okay, so we'll do this just for now. All right, let's just make sure this works. We are going to click it. We're going to click it off. And it looks like it's inverted a little bit. And then the second thing I'm noticing is that when the page first loads, it doesn't seem like it takes the hello world and applies it. So I'm not sure if maybe I updated the wrong thing. I have the hello world state here. And I think what needs to happen is that when this component first mounts, it should probably just call update directly and then pass in all the information. So I'll just say like on update, and we could basically say like use effect, and we will just do this. Actually, yeah, now that I think about it, we could probably just have an effect anytime you update state at all. Just call the parent component and tell it to update. That might be a lot easier to maintain, honestly. Now, I think if we wanted to do proper React, we should add an on update, and the on update probably needs to be a callback. Okay, so like this whole thing, technically we need to cache this. And so we'll say like an on update is equal to use callback, and we will just pass in our function here. Pass in some text, and then we're also going to need index. So index will be like a string. Okay, and so this hopefully should just create the function once and then cache it basically, and then we could pass that here like this. We'll just call it like this. All right, so we are running into an issue. I think there's something we're doing wrong with rendering too much. We have like an infinite loop going on. And one way we could achieve this is, I think, if we go to the text overlay, I think this is complaining because it doesn't think that this has an index. So we definitely need to add an index now. And technically we could just keep this a number. Let's do a little bit more refactoring. We're going to change the thing up here to be a number like this. And our text overlay knows what the index is, right? So we could just simply use the index that was given to call the onUpdate method when stuff changes. That was a little bit intense, but again, these are things you're going to run into when you're building out like real world applications. And that is the nature of React. You have to understand how to pass data around. I will say that one thing we could have done that might have made this a little bit easier is just pass the set transformation callback directly into the text overlay component and then run this logic directly in our effect. Instead of having to do this whole like parent-child calling an update method and then the parent having to do it. But to me, I don't think the text overlay should know about ImageKit, right? All it knows is like I have some widgets and you can change some state, and that calls something else which knows about like the formatting of ImageKit's transformations. Let's go ahead and just test it again. I'm gonna refresh the page, and then we're gonna make sure that we can apply blue. We can like move this. There we go. We can put this down below like that. Again, another thing I'm not really a fan of is that like every time you change a single thing here, like if I were to type like what is up, I'm pretty sure React is re-rendering every keystroke, and it is sending off requests to ImageKit to recompute and rebuild this image. And I think using a debounce at this point might be the best approach. So just go ahead and install Lodash and also the types. So like types Lodash. Oops, Lodash. I think technically what we could do here is just call debounce here. Make sure you import that. And then we're going to wrap all this with a debounce function. And then the second argument to debounce is going to be how long you want to wait. So again, let's just test this out with 2 seconds. I want to make sure this works, but I think it's fine. Let's just test it out. And one way you could also test it out is just add a console log. So like we are updating. This should only run after we wait 2 seconds. So if we go to our console over here and clear it, if I type in like what is up and wait 2 seconds, we should see a console log pop up. and then it finally updates the image. So this allows users to do a bunch of stuff in the UI as fast as possible, but until they've waited a full 2 seconds, then the image will kick off and re-render. So super easy to add in, very, very powerful to learn how it works. The use callback makes it a little bit confusing to understand and React, but yeah, this is more advanced stuff that I hope you guys are understanding. Let's try actually 250 milliseconds. I believe like there's a certain sweet spot where like the human mind or the eyes can't even recognize that there's like a delay. 250 seems like a pretty good medium, right? All right, so yeah, so let's go ahead and commit what we have. I think we made some good changes. I'm gonna say adding a color picker, ability to hide or show background on text, and debounce. I'll go ahead and just commit this real quick. So there is one more type of thing I want to add to when you're building out memes, and built into ImageKit, there are ways to apply filters to your image. So like if I go to effects, you'll see they have different types of effects. They have sharpening, they have gradients, they have blurring, and I'm going to pick some of these and allow the user to basically apply them to the entire image as they're making their memes. And I think the best place to maybe put that, maybe we could just add some type of checkboxes here above the image, and all of those can control the overall like effects that are applied. So let's go to the customize panel, and let's first figure out where we need to add this. So again, we have like a left and right thing going on. This is the image, and this is the panel section. Actually, I think it might make more sense to just put it right here. So like put it above, and I don't know why that just added in. Let's just go ahead and say like effects. And this could be, right now we'll do like an H2. And let's make sure this shows up somewhere. Okay, effects. And for the effects, we are just going to basically put a bunch of checkboxes and labels. And we already have one checkbox, apply text background. So why not just grab the apply text background, this whole div, let's just grab it. And we're going to go ahead and just put like a grouping here. I'll say class name is equal to flex, and we'll say gap of 4 maybe. And we're going to go ahead and just paste in our first checkbox. And we'll have to figure out what this is going to be in a second, but this will be a blur effect. So we'll just go ahead and keep it blur, and we'll change the label to say blur. So now if we go back, we got a blur that we can click, and there's a lot of gap between that. So I might actually change that to a gap of 1, maybe a gap of 2. Now, one of the ways we could do effects is I like to do the simplest thing. So we have a blur state, and we are going to just basically toggle that based on if it's set or not. So set blur and that. Okay, simple enough. So now when I toggle this, we want to apply the blur effect to this image. Well, how do we do that? Well, we've done it multiple times. You basically just need to go in here, and let's go look at how it's done. So if you click on blur, notice that the blur is added to a TR BL10. We have the image, and these are the transformations for the image. But technically, this transformations array, this is for all of the individual control panels and text overlays. So I feel like maybe we should rename this a little bit to, instead of set transformations, this will be called transformations. And this one will be called text transformations array. Okay, and we're going to have another array that's specifically for like the image blurring effects. What we are worried about is down here in the transformations. Again, this is an array, and we could potentially just spread 2 transformations together. So like add all of the transformations for the text overlays, and then we could add like an image. So I think we could just basically do if blur is set, then we could simply just I think we can do BL of a number, right? So BL of 2 or something. Otherwise, we will just say undefined. And obviously, we want to filter this out and only get the ones that are defined. Okay. And also, I need to do raw here. I think it's confused because it thinks that I'm potentially pushing like something bad into this. Honestly, I'm just going to say as any after this, whatever. We'll come back and fix it later, hopefully. But let's see if this actually made it blurry. So now if we were to blur this, it actually blurs it. Now it's also blurring our text. So I think maybe the ordering of the transformations could change this. So instead, if you were to, for example, like move this down, it doesn't blur out the text, which is pretty cool. So the ordering of your transformations will get applied in the order that you define them. So if you really wanted to blur this out more, like a 5 or something, there you have it. The text is unaltered, but the image is messed up a little bit. And we'll just keep it like hard-coded as like a 3 or something. But again, this is just like to kind of demonstrate that this is possible. Open over here, and that effect is just basically E sharpen with the number. So we could do the same thing where we make a sharpen and a set sharpen. And then we're going to go ahead and make like a whole nother section here. So we'll just grab this whole thing and we'll do this. And then we'll change this to say sharpen and set sharpen. Okay. And then again, we'll come down and we'll just say if sharpen is defined, we will apply whatever it was. So I think it was E sharpen 10. So E sharpen 10. And let's see what happens if we do this. Let's go back, click it, and it looks a little sharpened. Okay. Let's do one more grayscale. So I think we understand now, if you actually just look at it, they tell you like the effect names. So E grayscale is what we want. So let's do the same thing. And at this point, you may refactor and say, you know what, I think it'd be better if this was like something that we conditionally did, because now we're like copying, pasting code quite a lot of times. And we will just add in grayscale. We'll copy this, paste this in. We'll say grayscale. And of course, this will be grayscale, and this will use set grayscale. And then down here, we will just set it as well. So now we have 3 different filters. We can actually apply all these around the same time. And like, we can do quite a lot. Like I can even go and apply a background color to this. And we can make whatever type of memes that we want, pretty customizable. Maybe improving this a little bit would be good. We could add it into its own card. And so we could go up here, import the card component. And let's kind of look at this. Okay, so that put it all in a card, which is nice. But I think the H2 should probably be in here. And we'll say class name could be like a text of 2XL, font bold. And we'll just go ahead and say effects with the colon here. And some of the things we'll have to do is we'll have to put this in a div. And we'll have to wrap all this like that. Okay. And then, yeah, let's just improve this a little bit. I think the card needs some padding. So yeah, definitely need to add like a P4 to that. And then this is a little big, and we'll say font semi-bold there and see what happens. You know, I just don't like the bold. Let's just get rid of the bold and get rid of the colon. And then also we can say space Y of 4. All right, this is looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and just commit this as well. And I'll say adding effects. And we only had to change one component for this, which is pretty nice. So I think the next thing I want to add in is the ability to download this image to your computer. I mean, granted, people can right click and say save image as, and this is super simple to do. But having a button, again, just improves the user experience just a little bit enough that it makes your app feel polished and that you like thought into all the different things that you can do to really make it useful. So let's go ahead and find the customized panel. And we're going to scroll down until we find the panel for displaying the image, which is this. And what we could do is wrap this in a div, okay? And then inside of this div, we could just give it a class name of flex column, gap of 4, and then we're going to add a button here. So let's just add a button, and we're going to call it download image, okay? Go ahead and auto import this, which I already think we have. And let's look at it. Download image, okay? So it's a little large. I think it would be better if this was smaller and over to the side. And instead of saying download image, you could literally just say download and just bring in an icon. Just use Lucid React and we have icons. And so now on the button itself, what we could do, there's different ways that you can basically not have it be full width. You could do wfit, and I believe that'll make it scale down. And then in the parent container itself, we could basically just say like self end, and I think that'll push it to the end. Okay, so that's a good start, but I think it actually makes sense if this was on this row so that the image wasn't like off. Like this just looks kind of weird. Now there's different places, like you can think about, okay, maybe I could add it to the very bottom of the image, but then the user has to remember to scroll down to the bottom to see it. So I think keeping it at the top might be nice. So let's just try to refactor it a little bit more. But we have a problem because the button technically needs to live here, but this is a React server component, and I was going to try to create a ref and just pass in the ref to this. So sometimes it's easier to just, okay, let's move the title into the panel. And we'll put it here and just put that in a fragment like this. And then here could be a div like that. And we'll say class name. We'll say flex. Say justify between item center. And now everything that's in here, like we could literally add the button here called download like this. Now we got a download button and it's right over here. Now one thing I do want to point out with ShadCN is that there's tooltips. Typically when you hover over a button or something, like you should have a tooltip so people know what it does. Like for example, there's just an icon, like a download icon. What does that actually mean? It should be apparent that this is a download, but for accessibility purposes, like you should be able to hover over it and know what it's doing. So we are going to pull in a tooltip. So we need to make sure we have this installed. And let's go back over here and let's clear this out and install the tooltip. Again, I'm going to keep this all in the same client component just to make it easier to refactor and move stuff around. But we're going to take that tooltip provider and we're going to paste it right here. And we're going to take our button and we're going to put it right here. And the tooltip will say download image. All right, let's test this out. If we go back to the app and then hover over this, notice it says download image. Very easy. So now if you click on this button, we want it to take the current source value, probably download that image as a blob, and then have it display on the user's downloading tab. Okay, so how do I do that? Well, I think we're going to have to get access to the actual source, because right now, like the transformation, like we have to build up the final URL, and we don't know what that's going to be. You can use DOM. You can use DOM manipulation to get what you want. Okay, and so I'm going to go ahead and just wrap this thing in a div that has an ID of image. I'll just say meme, okay? And actually, instead of image, I'm going to say meme. Let's get rid of this image ref. You have to basically get DOM elements manually. So let's query for that meme ID and get the image that should be on the page somewhere. And let's just go ahead and console log that image out. Okay, let's go back to console. Let's clear this out. Let's click it. I gave it a class instead of an ID. So let's try it again. Let's go up here, click it. There we go. Look at that. We get the image back, but look, it has a source attribute and it has the entire URL that we'll need if we wanted to download it manually. So let's go to that download button. You can say const source is equal to image dot source, I believe. Actually, this is to get attributes source. Let's see if this works. I'm gonna go ahead and just console log this and print this out. There we go. We got the full URL. So now at this point, we can actually fetch the image. So in the JavaScript itself, we can actually say image is equal to await fetch. We could pass in the source, give this an async, and then I'll say image blob here. Okay, and I'm going to let AI just basically finish this because I would have to go to Stack Overflow anyway. But using the blob, you can create an object URL and then basically create a fake anchor tag and then click it. It is complaining about this. I think the issue is that I'll have to say this might need to be image response. The blob. And again, this is something that you would probably find on Stack Overflow. So like sometimes I don't feel bad just letting AI auto-complete it all for me. Let's try it again. So now if I click on this, we got a download. And if you click on it, it is on our computer. Pretty nice, huh? Cool. So let's commit that. I'm going to say adding the ability to download images. Okay. Let's go ahead and sync that all up. Okay. So now what I want to do is as a user, you should be able to like sign up and create an account. And after you create an account, like when you make your own memes, you should be able to store them in your own meme collection so you can come back later and like reference them. So let's go to the Drizzle docs and we're going to try to get Drizzle set up in our project. Now, I will say that we are going to be using Postgres for the database. I think Postgres is a good choice. And we are going to be using Neon. With Next.js, with middlewares and Auth.js, it's a little challenging to use normal Postgres drivers. So we're going to use a third-party serverless compatible database called Neon. But if you wanted to basically use something else, you could. Let's click Neon over here and let's kind of walk through this setup guide. So let's just go ahead and install the Neon database driver. So I'll go ahead and run that. And while that's running, we're also going to install DrizzleKit after that finishes. Okay, let's run DrizzleKit. And DrizzleKit's a tool you can use to basically run your migration scripts. It's very useful. Now to get this working, what we could do is we could basically set up a database object here. So we're going to go over to our app and we'll say inside the app, we'll say make a folder called DB, and then we'll make a file called DB, and we will just paste this in, and we're going to export the DB so that other places in our app could use it. And we need to have a Drizzle database URL defined to be able to basically connect to the Neon database and like fetch data and run data and stuff like that. Okay, so that's kind of the first step. The second step is we need to set up DrizzleKit so it knows how to actually run the migration scripts. Let's scroll down to the configuration because this is also a good way to kind of get this set up. Let's grab this whole file and then we're going to paste this in. Now what we need to do is we need to give it the right schema. So right now we don't have a schema file, so we're going to make a schema.ts, and the DrizzleKit needs to point to source app db schema. So it knows where to load in that schema file. For dialect, it'll be Postgres, SQL, okay, but and then over here for the URL, we definitely want to add the same URL that we've been using for Drizzle database URL. We'll paste that in and make sure that is defined. And hopefully, that's all we really need to do. Now, where do we get the Drizzle database URL? Well, if you go to Neon, let's go ahead and look through here. So here is our entire URL that we can use. Just go ahead and copy the snippet. And I believe that's what we can use in our .env file. So make sure that inside the database URL, we put that. And then also, we need to rename our .env file to Drizzle database URL. By the way, I think I renamed the .env.local to .env. I don't know if I have that on the video, but just keep that in mind. I did have to rename that because DrizzleKit needs a .env file, not the local one. We should have like enough set up so that we can actually like run and connect to our database. But what we also need to do is set up a schema file. So it makes sense to go and look at Auth.js and start getting this set up because they're going to tell you how to get the Drizzle schema file set up. So again, let's run this install next auth beta, and we'll just run that. And then we're also going to run npx auth secret, which will generate a secret variable and put it in our .env file. Actually, I put it in the local one for some reason, so let's just copy that out, and we're going to put it right there. Okay. All right, so now if we go to configure, we need to make an auth.ts file. So let's go and make in the source directory, we'll say auth.ts, and we'll paste that in. And then down here, we need to make a route.ts. So we're going to go and just inside of the source directory, paste that whole path in, copy the code, paste that in as well. And then we also need a middleware.ts. So let's go here in the source, middleware.ts, and then we need to paste in that. Okay, so that's like the bare minimum you need to do to get Auth.js set up. We also need to provide a provider. So here you can actually provide like a Google provider, which I think you can say import Google from next auth providers Google, and that will allow you to log in with a Google provider. All right, so there's still a little bit more we got to do. So you need to connect to a database so that you can store the user sessions and like store your user information. So we're going to go ahead and install this auth Drizzle adapter. So let's just run this command and make sure we have that Drizzle adapter set up. All this setup is kind of a pain, but it's like a one-time thing. You do this at the start of your project, and honestly, you should probably have some type of starting point already, like a starter kit or something that has all this stuff already hooked up. All right, let's look at the Postgres schema because we are using Postgres. So let's copy this whole schema file, and this is where it defines like the tables for the users and the sessions. So we'll open up our schema file. I already created one, I guess, and we will just paste all that code in. And instead of connection string here, we should probably say process.env.drizzle database URL. Okay, so that'll know how to connect to the Neon database. And at this point, hopefully we're good. I mean, I'm guessing I probably missed a step. There's just so much documentation sometimes. But if we go to tables, hopefully we should be able to run DrizzleKit and apply the changes to this table. So let's try that out. We're going to go to this terminal and keep our fingers crossed. I'm going to say npx DrizzleKit push. And that should look at our schema, decide what has changed, and then apply it to that remote database. So yes, I'm going to say execute all those statements. And then it did just apply those statements. So let's refresh this page. And there you have it. We have a bunch of different tables that have been created for us. And that's how you know you successfully set this stuff up. The next steps are, how do we allow a user to basically sign in or register with a Google account? Okay, so to know if we're logged in, the first thing we could try doing is go to the header. And we need to basically show a login button if we're not logged in. Because right now we show like this account dropdown. And technically, if we're not logged in, we shouldn't show that. So going to the docs, this is how you can get your current session to know if you're logged in or not. So we're going to go ahead and just run this command. And we'll do it at the top of the header for right now. And if this session is defined, actually first let's import this from auth. And we'll put async on this header. So let's scroll down here. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to abstract this away to a different component down here. So I'm going to say async function account menu. And we're going to go ahead and get the session. This is something new that is built into Auth.js, where you can know if a user is signed in or not based on if this returns a value. It could be a session or it could be null. And we're basically going to say if, there is no session, we could simply just return a button that says login. Otherwise, we are going to return that whole dropdown. Okay, and then we could just use that account menu right here. And let's just delete all this stuff. Okay, so let's test this out. If we go back to our UI, notice that we have a login button. Now to get this to work, go back to Auth.js and let's understand how we can sign in and sign out. So you could potentially do a form action like this if you want to keep this all in the server, which we are in the server. So we could just follow this. And instead of a button here, we do a form that happens to have a ShadCN button. And this is going to call a sign in method like this. So if we go back to the UI and click sign in, that should redirect us to a sign in page. Awesome. And now if you click sign in with Google, that should take us to a Google sign in. But we haven't set up the Google credentials yet. We haven't set up all those special things. So let's do that real quick by going to console.cloud.google.com, and we are going to make a new project. We're going to call this one meme generator, and we're going to create that and give it a second, and then it'll finish creating your project. And then we can actually get it set up so we can use the secret IDs and tokens to allow us to log in. All right, so let's go to API and services and go to credentials. And actually, I think we have to go to OAuth consent screen first. So let's configure the consent screen. And for right now, you can just say this is an external app. You can say this is meme generator. You can put your email. I guess I'll put my own. And I think that's all you need here. You definitely need to put your email down here again, which is hidden by my screen. So let's just show here. You put your email down here. You click save. And then you basically just keep clicking save and continue. That's all you need to do for this part for right now. And now once you've done that, you can go to credentials, and then you can create a credentials for your OAuth client ID. And again, you select that you're a web app. This is going to be meme generator. And then we're going to go ahead and add a URI. So we'll say HTTP localhost port 3000. And then for the redirect URLs, I do believe you need to say API auth callback Google. And let's create that. Okay, so now we got the client ID and the client secret. So we're going to grab the client ID, and we definitely need to put that over here. I'll say Google client ID is equal to this, and then Google client secret will be this. Now we do want to double check if we got that set up correctly. I'm going off of memory, but we probably want to go down to providers and find Google. somewhere here. Providers, Google, here it is. And this is the two environment variables you need, auth Google ID and auth Google secret. So actually, this will be auth Google ID and auth Google secret. Okay, so if this is set up correctly, we can basically try to log in. So let's click on sign in with, all right, and then we can select your email. And if you have everything set up correctly, that should redirect your user back to your app. And then that should actually create the user in your database. Now we did get some type of hydration error. We'll have to look into that. I think it's because we have a button inside of a button, but go to Neon and let's go ahead and look at the user table and refresh real quick. And it didn't do anything. And I think the reason is because we probably missed a critical part of setting up the database. So let's go back to the adapters and let's do Drizzle and scroll through. I think we just totally forgot to add the adapter here. So I apologize for that. Let's add the adapter. I mean, this is a pretty easy fix. Add the Drizzle adapter, which comes from that Drizzle adapter we installed earlier. And then we need to import the DB connector, which right now lives here. And I noticed that we have a DB here, so I don't think we need like all this stuff. Like, we can delete some of this stuff. Okay, let's try this out again. Let's try to log in one more time. So sign in, and I'll do that all over again. Okay, try to sign in with my user. I'll get redirected back to my app. The app is still throwing a little hydration error, but now if we go to Neon and refresh, we have an account now. So we have successfully logged into our system. We have a user, we have an account. Pretty cool. We also have sessions, so when people log out, those sessions will go away. But let's go here and notice that this also changed. This used to be a sign-in button. Now it is a drop-down. So for right now, we are going to keep this real simple. Like, we don't need a settings and a support in my account. Like, we just need a log out button because this is just a simple project, right? So how would you achieve that? Well, we could simply just add a form. And right here where we have a menu item, we could just have a logout. Now, instead of having a drop-down menu item here, I think what we could do is just put the button here. And we could just make it a normal button like this. So to get this working, we could basically just make this a normal button so it doesn't have any styling, and it should just adopt the styling of the drop-down menu. Okay, so now we got a button we can click, and hopefully that'll sign us out. So now if we were to click this, it signs us out. Awesome. And so we can sign in and sign out. So at this point, I think auth is set up correctly, and our database is set up, and the Drizzle ORM is set up. I'm going to commit, and then we'll move on to actually like trying to allow people to favorite different things. So let's just commit all this real quick. And I'll say adding Drizzle with Auth.js. All right, so to be able to track if a user is favoriting something or like bookmarking something, we can do a couple of things. The first thing we should do is in the schema, we could create a new table now. So let's just go here and let's just create a table. And we're going to go ahead and just copy this. And we'll call this table favorites. Yeah, so favorites, and we'll call this favorite. And some of the things that we're going to have to track would be the user ID. So we need to know who is trying to create this favorite entry. All this other stuff we can potentially just get rid of for now. And then we want to track the meme ID. So this will be text to meme ID. And we won't do a references. We'll just say not null. Yeah, I think that might be all we need to do. So the user can click on a favorite button, which will store this record in a table. And we also track what meme that they're trying to favorite. Again, iterative approaches work good. We're going to go ahead and apply those changes now because we need to make sure we create this favorite table inside of the Postgres database. So I'm going to say npx drizzle it push. And that should apply the changes. It might ask us to confirm. I'll say yes. Now, Drizzle Kit push is throwing this strange error, and it looks like there's an open issue about this. But let's check. I'm going to refresh this page and see if it created our table at least. So we do have a favorite table now, which is good. And hopefully that's good enough. I mean, the table got created. It's just failing on some foreign key constraint stuff that maybe it won't block us. So let's roll with the punches, and we are going to, first of all, log in. We want to make sure that we're logged in. And so now that we're signed in, we could basically have a button over here that allows us to favorite something. So let's try to find that. Let's go to the meme page, the customize page. We have the panel, and the panel should have a section where we have the download. So we have the download button. By the way, I think we can say as child here to fix like this hydration error we keep getting when the page loads. There we go. I would say if you ever get a hydration error with ShadCN, it's probably because you're missing an as child somewhere because you're nesting like a button inside of a button or something. But yeah, right over here, we're going to add another button right next to this. And again, we're going to use a tooltip. So we're going to keep the tooltip provider. And then we're going to copy this whole thing. We'll have two providers next to each other. But what this button's going to do is we are going to allow them to heart this. So I'll say heart. And I'm going to try to just use a server action here. So I'm going to go ahead and just like wrap this whole thing. This will be a form that has a button. That's a type of submit. And when you click it, it's going to call an action like this. And we'll say use server inside of here. And what this needs to do is it basically needs to connect to Drizzle and create or delete the current favorited thing. Now, instead of writing your actions inline, I would recommend at least making like an actions file. So say actions, and then at the top, I would say use server. This is just my common convention I like to do. A lot of people do it as well. But we're going to go ahead and say favorite meme. And this will have an image ID, which will be a string. And the first thing we need to do is get the session. So make sure that the user is logged in. And if they're not logged in, we should probably throw some type of error. And then we'll get the user ID from the session. So like if you look at the session, you have a user, and that could potentially have an ID. I don't know why it could be null for some reason, but I guess if you want to be proper, you should make sure that you check that and throw an error if not. And now finally, what we need to do, I'm actually going to call this favorite meme action, is we're going to call that instead directly. I'm going to go ahead and just import that. Okay. And then we probably need to make sure that we bind it with the file, file ID. Okay, so we are missing the file ID. So what we need to do is go up here, and this needs to also pick in the file ID. Actually, I think, is it called file ID? Yeah, I think it's called file ID. So let's find the customized panel, and we'll pass in file ID here. Yep. Okay, so now we're passing that into the panel. We have access to that, and so we're going to bind that to the favorite meme action. And then this will just have the file ID. I'm gonna call it file ID instead. Okay, so how does this actually work? So basically, we need to import that DB object. This is the Drizzle DB object, and we are going to do a insert into the favorites table. So let's also import the favorites table, and we're going to say values, and we're going to say import the user ID, and then the meme ID could be the file ID. Okay, but what if they've already favorited the thing? Do we want to insert it every single time? Probably not. So what I'm going to do first of all is I want to get the favorite. So let's do an await db.query. Oh, and we don't have this set up with the schema. So let's actually go back to our DB object. And I think it's missing the schema. So you can actually import a schema object like this. So you can get some type safety, and we'll say import schema from that schema folder. I think we can actually say import star as schema from this and pass it. And then you have access to all the tables when you do a .query, and we want to get the favorites. And we'll say find the first where, and then we can say EQ, bring that in from Drizzle. We'll say favorites dot user ID is equal to user ID. And then also I believe we can bring in an and. So like you can just wrap this like that. So basically find us the favorite where the user ID is this and the meme ID is the file ID. And then if this thing exists, we'll just delete it. And if it doesn't, we will insert it. So instead of that, we're actually going to use this whole where clause again. So like delete the existing record, and that should hopefully work. Now, after we've either created a new record or deleted a record, what we can do is we can say revalidate path. And then we're going to go ahead and just revalidate the customize path like this. And more specifically, we should probably revalidate the current image ID that we're on. So I'm going to go ahead and say file ID. Okay, so a lot of stuff going on here, but basically what's saying is check that we're logged in. We're not, throw an error. And then fetch the current favorite from the database. If it's not defined, well, then we need to create it. If it is defined, that means that the user tried to toggle it off. They don't want to favorite anymore. And so technically we could change this to toggle favorite meme for a more descriptive name of this. And then we're going to go ahead and call toggle favorite meme. We'll do some cleanup over here. And so now whenever someone clicks on this button, we're going to toggle it by inserting the record or deleting it. But it would be nice if we could change how the heart was displayed. Maybe changing the color of it, or I think there's like a heart full. Yeah, there's a heart filled icon. And so we could figure out a way to know if the user has this favorited already or not. And the way we can do that is we could potentially write I like calling this like a loaders file. I'm going to say loaders.ts. And we're going to go ahead and say export async function get favorite. And so what we're going to do is we are going to grab this same where clause. We're going to pass it in. And again, we need authentication. So we could just grab all this stuff and paste it in here. Okay. Make sure you import auth. You want to make sure the user is authenticated. Return if this is favorited or not. So if this thing returns a value, then we know that they have favorited the thing. Otherwise, we know that they didn't. So let's go ahead and import this as well. Import that. And let's just double check our code. And also, like, there could be some cleanup along the way that we need to do. Like, this could be pulled out into a helper function because we've copied it into 2 different actions. In fact, like, let's just do that right now because this is probably going to be useful. I'm going to go ahead and just put a new file here called like auth.utils. And then I'm going to say export async function assert authenticated. And I'm going to paste all that code in there, and we're going to return the user ID. And so this is going to be called from both of those functions to basically get the user ID. Otherwise, it's just going to throw errors. So like now we can actually say const user ID is equal to await assert authenticated. There you go. Now it's a little bit cleaner. And then I can go back to my action, which it's over here. Same thing. Just go ahead and use that instead. A little bit cleaner code. And now we should have a way to basically favorite and unfavorite this stuff. And so we can call that loader when this page loads. So we are in a client component now. And so we'd have to basically say is favorited. And then we have to basically allow the page to send in that Boolean. So we're going to go back to the page and we want to pass in, and then we want to basically check if someone has favorited this thing. Okay, so we can bring in that loader function, and then we're going to pass in is favorited over there. And everything should be connected now. So now we're checking if the user has favorited the thing. We pull that from the database. And then what we do is we can just have a ternary here. If it is favorited, we show a heart. Actually, I think this needs to be backwards. Okay, so if you have favorited the thing, show the filled heart. Otherwise, don't show anything. So a lot of code. Let's actually test if this works. I'm going to go ahead and click on this and see if it worked. And as you just saw, now this thing is favorited. The tooltip needs to be changed. But if I click it again, now it's unfavorited. Pretty cool. So I'm going to go ahead and just paste in this right here. And we can just change the text a little bit. So if it is favorited, I'm going to say unfavorite. And then if it's not, we'll say favorite. Maybe favorite meme, so it's a little bit more clear. And then let's look at the app. Hover over it. It says unfavorite meme. Click it. And it says favorite meme. It would be nice if these things were actually like joined together as well. So we're going to go up here and say flex the gap of 4. We'll say justify end. And then we'll just go ahead and wrap those together. Now they're right next to each other. Pretty cool. And I think that's about it. So now we actually have the ability to favorite and unfavorite memes. And once you do that, that's stored in a database and is persisted. Let's go ahead and add what we've done. I'll say add the ability to favorite a meme. Okay. And once we've done that, let's go to the header. And we want to basically add a link to your favorites page. So like a page that as a user, you can see everything you've ever favorited. So let's go up here and we are going to find where it says dashboard, and we're going to just copy that and we'll make another one called slash favorites. And then we'll say favorites. Okay, this is actually in the sheet I added this, so we actually want to add this like over here as well. So definitely update in both places. So if we were to click on favorites, that'll take us to a page that doesn't exist. So we should probably go and add that page. So let's go. So inside the app folder, we'll say favorites slash page.tsx. And that'll add it to a nested folder for us. And what this page needs to do, let's just copy the search page, because I think it's going to be a very similar type of feel to it. We'll paste that in and we'll say favorites page. And we don't need a search params at this point. We'll keep it simple. And so what we need to do is when this page loads, we need to fetch all the favorites that the user has. So again, we can make like a loaders file, loaders.ts. And then inside of this, we'll say export async function get favorites. And we'll use that method that we created earlier. And then what we'll also do is import our database, and we want to get every single favorite that's associated with this user. So let's bring that in, bring in the favorite table from the schema, and then we are going to return the favorites here. And we might have to change, we have like some overloading going on. I'll just say all favorites. We can fix that. Okay, so this will query the database and give every single favorite that this user has. And what we could do is display some cards on this page using that information. So let's just go ahead and say like const favorites is equal to await get favorites. Import that. And we're also going to add a favorites list.tsx. So instead of a results list, we're going to do a favorites list. And then we're going to pass in all those favorites like this. And update the h1. And then we need to make the favorites list. So I'll go over here and say favorites list.tsx. And then we can copy the existing results list. And we will say favorites list. We'll say favorites. This is favorites. Now the difference here is that this is an array of favorite entities, which we have to go to our schema. We actually have to export that. So let's say const export const favorite is equal to type of favorites dot infer select, I believe. And that allows us to basically import the favorite from, did I name that right? Let me just double check I named that right. In our schema, oh, it needs to be export type, not export const. Yeah, so now we should be able to import it. There it is. Okay. And technically this is a type. And this is just allowing us to basically like everything that comes back from the database, this is expecting a list of favorites. And so now we can actually like loop through these and display a couple of things, right? Now the card title, we don't actually have like the information for the favorite. We could probably denormalize and like put that there. So I'm gonna get rid of the header for right now. But what we do have is we have a favorite dot meme ID. And we could basically use that meme ID here. Actually, now that we're here, there's some stuff that I'm recognizing that maybe we need to also store in the table. So for example, we don't have the file path. And technically we could like look up the file path for every single record from the file ID that we get. But that doesn't sound very efficient. So I'm actually going to just go ahead and denormalize our data a little bit, so that when we create a favorite, we actually store the file path as well and make sure we're not missing anything else. Let's try this out. Let's go back to the schema. We're going to add back a file path and make sure that it's not null. And before we can run this, I do think we're going to have to go and like delete. If we have any favorites currently, we're going to have to delete them or default them. Yeah, I'm just going to delete it for right now. It'll be easier. And this is also missing a primary column. So we should probably have a primary auto incrementing ID on these things. If we don't already have one. Here, we could just do a crypto random ID, whatever. Let's just go ahead and add that in. This will be the primary ID for the column. Now, unfortunately, I don't know if we're going to be able to run this just yet with the not null. So I'm going to get rid of the not null. And then we're going to try to do a db push. So let's run npx drizzle kit db push. See what happens. Let's try running this. It's going to fail on that other weird constraint, I think. Okay, now we have an auto-incrementing ID, and it did clear out the favorite tables for us. So again, why did I do that? The reason I did that was so that when we run the action to actually save the favorite, we could store the file path so that we can use it later. So file path, I'm going to go ahead and just let that be passed in as a string. And then let's figure out where we use that. Okay, we used it, where do we use it? Oh, we use it here. And then I'm going to bind the file path. Okay, so now when we favorite something, it should also store the file path. And the reason we're doing this is so that later on when we render out all the favorites, we have a file path that we can use. And if it's not defined, I'll just go ahead and say empty string. In fact, we could actually just go back to our schema now and we need to make this required. So I'll say not null. We're going to run our db push one more time, which should now hopefully make that a required field. And then our TypeScript will be happy because it's going to assume it already exists. All right. So a lot going on there. Let's actually check out the UI because it's crashing. The UI is crashing. Let's go and import this favorites list. Go ahead and bring that in and check if this is working. Okay, so right now we don't have any favorites. So it'd probably be cool if we found a meme. Go ahead and just type B, and this is what we get. Let's customize this one now. And what we're going to do instead is we're going to favorite this one, and then we're going to go to favorites, and it's showing up. So now it shows up in our favorites. And so now we can actually go back and customize it, and it'd probably be nice if there's a way to unfavorite it directly from this page. And so to achieve that, we are going to try to add another button here. So we're going to add a form and a button. Now the button will be very similar to the other page, which I believe was like the customize panel. So honestly, we could take this whole tooltip thing and we could make it into a shared component. So I'm gonna go ahead and just say like favorite button.tsx. And then we're gonna say export function favorite button. Just go ahead and return that whole thing. And then whatever imports that we're gonna need, like let's just go ahead and just grab everything and delete what we don't even need. Okay. And then we will just delete some of this stuff. And the question is, what do we actually need from this? We need a file ID. We need a file path. Oh, and I guess we need to know if it's favorited. So I'll just go ahead and say like favorited is a Boolean. And then we can delete the file stuff like this. We'll say file ID, file path. So now we have a nice reusable component that we can use on 2 pages. Now the issue is that this action calls a hard code to revalidate path. And so one thing we could do is pass in like a path to revalidate, which is going to be a string. And then that could just call this here. And the reason we're doing that is because like we're trying to reuse an action that can be used on 2 different pages. Sometimes I would just probably clone the entire function and paste it and just like modify it as needed. But for this particular example, I think it makes sense to just like try to reuse it. And so for this favorite button, we need to make sure that we pass in the customize page. We'll say customize / and then I think it's a file ID is what we used. Okay, so now when the action fires, it's going to revalidate the path if it's used here. And if we go back, we can use this favorite button over here instead of this whole tooltip. We can import this and just make sure we're passing in the stuff that's needed like that. And now we can use this on this other page as well after I delete some of this unused code. Now if we go over here, again, we wanted to add a button here. So like, let's just add in that new button we made, import it. And the things we need are favorite.meme ID, which is actually the file ID. And then we need favorite.file path. And then is favorited. So how do we know if this thing is favorited? Well, it's in the favorites list, so it must be. So let's just hard code it to true. And now that I'm looking at this, this needs to be configurable. So there's different ways you could do this. You could pass in the server action as a prop. That's something valid you can do in Next.js. Or I could just say path to revalidate here, and we'll just pass that in. So let's just do that right now. Y'all can leave a comment if you rather me not do that. And then we're going to say path to revalidate is going to be the customized page here. And then over here in the favorites list, we will say path to revalidate will be favorites, because you just clicked on something that should refresh the current page you're on. All right, so that was a lot of work just to get a button to show up. But, you know, we tried to keep stuff a little bit dry and reusable when we think it's a good idea. And so on the card footer itself, I mean, we could probably just give this a class name of flex gap2 so that that favorite button is pushed off. You could also add the favorite icon up here, but I think it's fine to do here. So if I were to click this, it should remove it, and then it should refresh the page. Now it's gone. It's gone off my favorites page. The one thing I do like to do is add some type of like placeholder state. So if you load a page and there's no data, like if no one has any favorites, it's nice to show that to the user and then like give them an action they can do to like fill in this data, like walk them through your app. How does it work? Let's go to undraw. This has a lot of cool artwork you can use for your project. Just go ahead and make it the black color. And then we're going to go ahead and try to find something called like not found. So I'll just say not data. We're going to grab this and we're going to grab the SVG, because I do believe the SVG will be smaller. So download this and then move it to our project. All right, so now we have an empty SVG in our project. And what we could do is inside of the page, if we don't have any favorites, we could just display like a placeholder. So if the length is nothing, we display that. Otherwise, I guess we could do a ternary or something. I think that works good. So here is an initial no favorites yet, right? But this doesn't look too good. This would be better if there's like a placeholder image like we just downloaded. So I'm going to wrap this in a div, and we'll put a div over here as well. And then over here, we'll add a image. So we'll bring in like a React Next.js image. And we could go ahead and say source is equal to /empty.svg. We'll say width is like 200, height is 200, alt is an empty state image. Guess we'll add the ending slash. Actually, I wonder if public needs to be in the root directory. I think I have it in the wrong place. So let's move it up. And maybe that'll make it discoverable now. There it is. Okay, so this looks a little bit better. We got little placeholder images, and we have like a little message that says, you haven't favorited any memes. And then usually I like to add a button. So you could add a button here, which would have a link in it that tells you to go and like search for something. So technically we could go to the search page. If I typed in B, take us to the search page with nothing. So we'll go to search, and then we'll make sure we import the link. And this could have an as child, and this will be find some memes like this. Now let's check out how this looks. Okay, so it looks a little bit better, but I think it would be better if everything was centered on the page. So I think for all this, what I would do is I would say this is a class name of flex column, and just go ahead and center it like everywhere. Okay, so now this is centered, and we can also add some gap between this stuff. So just to space it out. And then this, it would kind of be nice if this was centered on the page when you don't have any data. Possibly, because it kind of looks weird that it's like, okay, why is this all the way over here? But then you have this. Or another approach that I've done, if you want to keep it that way, you could potentially just wrap this whole thing in some type of card. So I could say this is going to be a card object. Import that. And again, we're just doing the card for the styling. So we have a card here, and then we could add some padding to it. So really you just need like padding Y of 8 or something. And it just looks a little bit better, right? The page loads, the lines help your eyes guide to the center, and then you can say find some memes. That'll take you to the search page, which for some reason is not showing any results, which is interesting. Maybe I have to add the Q equals 0. Let me actually try that. Go back to favorites, click on find some memes. All right, there we go. That's probably a little bug we got to fix, but yeah, so now you automatically go to your favorites searching page, and then you can like find memes that you want to favorite. So I'll go here, I'll customize this one, I'll favorite it, go back, customize this one, favorite this one, then I go my favorites and they both show up, and I can easily just get rid of them if I don't want them on my favorites. Okay, so some little changes I'll do. Instead of a dashboard page, I think I'm going to make that just go to like, I think we'll make this go to just search. So this will be like browse, and then this will go to search with a Q of 0. Okay, I can click it, and then I can go and view all the memes that people have uploaded. And then of course you can always just search for them up here if you want to. So there's like 2 ways to kind of get to the same page if you wanted to. And then we probably want to add that also down here. So we'll say browse, and we'll say slash search of Q equals 0. Now some of the stuff we don't want to show up if you're signed out. For example, if I go to sign out here, you probably shouldn't have favorites showing up here. If you click on it, it's just going to crash. So in the header, let's make sure that this doesn't show up unless we were actually authenticated. So right now, we can say const session is equal to await auth. And I guess I'll just make this an async header component. And we could just use the session to know like if we're logged in. So if the session is defined, then we will show this link. We'll do the same thing down here for favorites. If this is defined, we'll show the favorites link. Okay, there we go. And now it's hidden. So now people can't see it unless they actually sign in, which is pretty good. But now let's double check. If you click on customize, it looks like there are more issues with this page. Okay, so let's look at the customize page. And I think the issue here is that the favoriting stuff fails if we are not logged in. So I think we also need to check, like if there is a session, then we can do that back in request. Otherwise, like we probably shouldn't run it. And so we will just go ahead and do that so the page can still load and people can still come in here and like make memes and download them at least, but they can't favorite them. So here's another thing. You're not logged in, but why is this button show up? So again, that's something else we should dynamically hide away. So let's go to the favorite button. And we do know if we're logged in here, I think. Actually, do we? Now, we don't know if we're authenticated in this thing. So what I could do is say is authenticated and just pass it in from the parent component. There's other ways you can do it as well in Next.auth. Like I think there's a use session hook. But honestly, like just checking if you're authenticated and passing in also works. Because I've seen like flashing in the UI when you use hooks. So basically, if we're authenticated, then we will actually show this. Cool. And now that we see this thing load, like I don't like how it says hello world up here. Like I don't think we should default this. So let's change that back to not being defaulted. To figure out where we do that. Where's hello world being defaulted? And it's being defaulted in this component. So I'm going to delete that. Oh, and it looks like there's an issue. When you don't have text, the whole thing just fails. I think we should actually do this. Like if this thing is not defined, we're going to default it to an empty string. I think we actually have to do the or. Okay, there we go. Does thing still work? It does. Okay, it looks like there's some issue with these buttons. I mean, like, why is there a remove last when there's no entries? So I think remove last, we should probably fix that a little bit. Find out where that's being displayed. And we don't want to show it unless we have enough overlays to show it, right? So you have to have more than one to show that button. So now it goes away unless we add one. Okay, a little bit better. And yeah, I think we made some good progress. I mean, we kind of spruced up various pages in the UI. So let's just go ahead and add everything. I'm going to say add empty state holder, fixing various bugs when logged out. That's one thing I definitely recommend is as you're building out, keep on testing your app with different edge cases. Log out, log in, change settings of your users, do some configuration type of stuff. Hit your app try everything, because there's going to be stuff that you're going to miss, and your users are going to find the moment you ship to production. But I think something that might be really cool to do is like on this search page, when you're like looking through memes, you can see how many other people have favorited a meme. So that should be really easy to do. Let's just go to the search page. So when we actually grab back the files, we could potentially loop through and get all the additional hearts. So I think one way we could do this, because we don't have like all the memes stored in the database, we could also like denormalize counts. And so we're going to make another table here called favorite counts. And we'll say favorite count over here. And the point of this is so that we can actually keep track of like how many favorites were on every meme. And we really just need to keep track of the ID of the meme, so meme ID, and then also a count, which will do an integer, which I think we can default it to 0 probably. Okay, so now that we have a new table, we might as well just try running this. So let's just do a db push. Hopefully it creates the table correctly, and let's just execute it. All right. Go back to Neon and check real quick if we get this. Okay, so now we have a favorite count. And whenever someone favorites a meme, what we could do is just increment that count by 1. And then also we can decrement it. So let's go back to our actions, because I think that's where we're favoriting something. So over here, what we could do is when we insert, we could just simply do a db dot insert on the favorites counts as well. So we'll go ahead and just import that one. And we'll say values is equal to, and we'll do the meme ID. Now, I think it would be good if we added some type of collision here. So like we could go and add a constraint on the meme ID as being like unique. So I think what we're going to do is follow a pattern over here. And just grab this callback function. We'll call this a table, and then we'll say table.memeID. And I think we can just say unique. So I'll go ahead and just bring in Drizzle of PG Core. But I am going to check the Drizzle ORM docs so that I don't do this wrong. So we're going to go and say unique and make sure that we have this. If you go down here, yeah, it looks like you can actually do this approach. Let's try that out. We'll say unique. We'll say meme ID, unique index, and then we will bring in PG Core, and this will just be the meme ID unique index on lower which I guess is a function down here that they're using, so we could just bring that in. We'll bring in the SQL function, bring in some types, bring in this, and then instead of email, we'll just call it token or string. And then this will be table.memeID, which will be a string as well. So hopefully this is going to put a constraint on it to say that you can't have multiple rows with the same meme ID so that they all use the same one. We'll try this out. And the reason we're doing this is because in the ORM, you can actually say like insert into this table. But if it already exists, just update it. So we're going to say insert into the meme ID, and they'll say count as 0. And then we'll say on conflict, we'll do an update. And so the update needs to be that we set the count equal to, and I think we could just say count plus 1. And then outside of that, I think we can say target. I think over here, target, we can actually just say like favorites count dot meme ID. Let's actually double check this again. My memory is a little hazy, but let's go check this out. And this is how they do it. Basically, you do a target. You target based on the meme ID. You target where, you can do a set. I don't think we even need the target where. I think this is how you do it. Also, let's do like an increment. Is there an increment example with SQL? Oh, the other, okay, so you actually have to like interpolate this. So we'll say like favorite counts dot count plus 1. Okay, so that'll increment it if it already exists. So if like 2 people have favorited this thing, it'll just increment it. And yeah, we could do the same thing over here, where basically we just decrement it, because we already know it exists, so it should already have at least one like on it. And so honestly, we could just do a db.update on the favorite counts. We'll say set, and then we'll do a similar thing where we basically grab the count. And then we're also going to do a dot where, and then we'll say equals. We'll say favorite counts dot meme ID, and then we will pass in the file ID here. All right, moment of truth. We updated this stuff. Let's see if it works. I would be surprised if it does. So let's go and click on the holding me back one, customize it. I'm gonna go ahead and it looks like it's already favorited. So that's gonna be a concern. Let's just go ahead and clear this out. Go to favorites, and I'm gonna delete this one. Okay, let's go back to the app and just refresh. And now if I were to favorite this, two things should happen. And that failed because I think this thing didn't even run a migration successfully. So malformed array, lower meme ID. You know what? I don't think I even need this lower thing. Like, let's just not do that. And hopefully this still works. Let's just run this real quick. Yeah, I just deleted the tables and we're going to start fresh. Let's see if this works. All right, so that should have added back the tables. Again, when you're doing production like this, you have to be much more careful about what you're doing. And you wouldn't use db push at all. You'd write migration scripts. All right, so let's go back to the app. I'm going to click on favorite and see what happens. And that hopefully created a favorite count. And it set it to 0, so that we're off by 1. We should probably fix that. And we should make that a 1 as a default. But other than that, I mean, what we should do is log in as one other user and try to do it again to make sure it works. So I'm going to sign out and sign back in with another user. And I will also click the favorite button. And it looks like that worked fine. If I go over here and click on the favorite count, it got incremented to 1, which is correct. I'm going to go ahead and just force it to be 2 because technically 2 people have favorited that thing. And then if I were to unfavorite it, and that created it to 3. So I think I'm just getting tired now. I should have decremented this instead of incremented it. Okay. So that was my mistake. Cool. So now we have a way to track how many people have favorited a particular meme. Granted, I went with a denormalized approach. Maybe you want to do some type of like aggregate function in SQL. It's just up to you. It really depends on how much accuracy you need for your counts. For me, I just need an estimate. Like, okay, if it's off by 1 at some point, then it's probably fine. So now that we have the favorite counts, we could probably just like get them and display them per component. So when we go to the search page and we get back some files, so on the search page, we could basically get all of the favorite counts. And we could just like make a new function called get favorite counts or something. And honestly, this could take in an array of file IDs. I think we have file ID here. So that this function, we go and just like make a loader or something. Say loader, loaders.ts, export async function, get favorite counts, and this will be a list of file IDs. So we'll say string array. So we're gonna do something new here. We're gonna use a select. Now a select allows you to basically use more like raw SQL. And so we're gonna go ahead and say like the favorite counts, and we wanna get where, and I think we can actually do in array, and we can actually give it an array of file IDs. So I think this will actually give us back, oh, actually the first argument needs to be the column. So let's do this dot meme ID, and then we'll pass in all the IDs. So this will give us back all the counts for all the memes. And so like we could just return this, very quick query hopefully. And then on the page itself, we should have an array of all of the meme IDs and the counts. And so we could pass it in as well. We could just say counts is equal to this, and we should auto import that. And now we have an array of ID, meme ID, and count. And so passing that in, we can say counts, and then over here we can say counts, and this will be a similar data structure. So we can say meme ID, and then count is a number, and that's going to be an array. Okay. And now we could basically just display like at the top or something. Favorited by counts. And then this is an array, so we have to look up. So I can say like find C, and the C.meme ID is equal to whatever this is currently. File.file ID. And then once we found it, if it exists, we can get the count. I think we can default this to 0 if it doesn't exist. And so now it says favorited by 0 users, favorited by 1 user. Okay. Now, obviously, you can make this a little bit better. Like we could probably just like put a heart instead of all that text. So we could just say like heart build icon, and then we'll just put the count right next to it. So that looks better. And I think what we could do is just move it to the right. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just divide this between the title, and then over here we'll have this icon. And then here we'll say class name of flex justify between. And now we should have the hearts over here, I think. And we just need to put that on a new line as well. So here we could do the same thing. Class name is flex, gap of 1, item center. So now we can see all the users and how many times they have favorited something, and it kind of like helps us look through and see like what people are liking. And technically we could sort by the favorites and stuff like that. But I think that might be good enough. Do a little bit of cleanup before I commit this, but I think we're going to go ahead and commit what we have because we made some decent changes. And yeah, I'll just go ahead and say displaying total favorites. Now, a couple of things I want to kind of clean up is like the title of the app, create next app, not the best. So let's go and find the layout. And let's just change that to be meme generator. This has kind of been bothering me the whole tutorial. Generate cool memes with friends could be the description. Okay. And now that that's updated, I also want to make the home page just automatically redirect to the search page. So we're going to go and add in the main page here. We could simply just say redirect, and then we're going to add next navigation, and we're going to say go to the search page, q equals nothing. Okay. And now I think if someone were to hit the home page, it'll automatically take them to the search page. I could probably move the search page logic to the home page, but I didn't feel like adding a landing page to this site. So I think just having like, a way to search and a way to add favorites and customize would be pretty good enough, right? So at this point in this tutorial, I want to highlight some other features that ImageKit provides. One of those is video related transformations. So similar to the image transformations we did, you can actually upload videos to ImageKit and you can resize them on the fly. You can crop them. You can do a bunch of other type of transformations on them as well. Like you can change a bigger video into some type of like YouTube short type of video. They have the ability to create video thumbnails, and it just automatically grabs a thumbnail from your video. Or if you want to get one from a specific point in time, you can do that. Now, when it comes to the video editing, there is a webhook that you basically have to set up. And when someone tries to process or transform a video, it takes some time, right? Processing videos is an instant. And so you have to set up a webhook, and they will send you an event when your video is ready to be used. And so if I were to take this further, I would probably say, hey, users should be able to upload GIFs. And then using ImageKit, you can actually take those GIFs and you can convert them to MP4 videos because GIFs are not that good in terms of bandwidth usage and size. Check out their video transformation section, and like you can actually overlay videos on top of other videos, right? For example, if you go to add video over other videos, you'll see that there's a video embedded inside of a video. So you could take the memes even a step further and have like memes nested inside of other memes if you wanted to. And then of course you could still do like the text overlay like we saw with the images and a bunch of other stuff. Another thing that's pretty cool is that when you upload GIFs to ImageKit, you can actually have those automatically converted to videos. And the reason you'd want to do this is that you save a lot of bandwidth and space by converting them to a better encoded format like MP4. GIFs are pretty, they take up a lot of content length, as you can see right here. But a GIF to video takes up a lot less. You see that there's 6 digits here, and over here there's 7 digits, right? So definitely a lot more space to do a GIF with the exact same images. So that's built in directly to ImageKit. And so if you wanted to take the app further with memes of GIFs, you could probably convert them to MP4s and then do the video processing on top of those with text overlays and all this other stuff. There's also another cool feature that I didn't get a chance to demo in this tutorial, and that is visual search. But basically, you can search with like a sentence or like a collection of words, and it's going to figure that out using AI over your image library, which images matches those the best. So if you have a collection of a bunch of images, you could search like white dress, and then it'll just automatically figure out which images have white dresses in them, which could be a really powerful thing you can integrate into memes. If you want to find memes that are like a particular style or have certain characters, maybe you can just do that with the AI visual search. Another cool thing is they have an AI transformations, which is in beta. As you can see on the right, they have a bunch of other features such as generative fill, where you can have it automatically fill in something. For example, over here, you'll see that it filled in the cabinets and it changed them a little bit. You can retouch up a picture with better quality. You can crop out faces. You can do a smart crop to basically have it focus on certain things in the image. Now, another cool feature is that you can actually generate images using a text prompt. So you can see here, here's a syntax for that. And here is some results for a man eating a burger. Here's another version of that. And then a woman wearing a red top. So that's another option if you want to add generative images using AI to your apps. So again, a lot of cool AI features that are currently in beta, but you can check them out and they could help you with maybe building out some cool things into memes in the future. But I would say if you need a powerful place to store your assets, your images, and your videos, go check out ImageKit. They have a bunch of built-in solutions. And I just gave you a little slice of all the cool things that were possible by making out this meme generator. Code for this whole tutorial will be updated and put in the description if you want to check it out. And other than that, have a good day and happy coding.